Hello everyone, this is Oserera with the O3XX series, and with me, my hermano Tyler Pollock. Today's special guest is Dagan Van Oosten. A little bit about Dagan. Dagan is a 12-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, as well as a 12-year veteran of the intelligence community. He has multiple combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, to which he deployed in between 2003 and 2014. His time in the Marine Corps was primarily focused on scout sniper operations, as well as battalion-level missions and force reconnaissance missions. During his time in the Marine Corps, Dagan was selected from his peer group to be assigned as a primary field craft instructor at the world-renowned Scout Sniper Instructor School in Quantico, Virginia. During his tour at Quantico, Dagan was assigned as the FBI's Hostage Rescue Team Sniper Liaison, as well as training a wide variety of mission partners from the federal law enforcement community to include the United States Special Operations Community. After leaving the Marine Corps, Dagan attended assessment and selection for a classified program for the United States government. He then spent 5 years in Afghanistan and Israel conducting operations in support of intelligence operations and the global war on terror. Dagan was selected once again to be one of 4 plank holders and architects of a classified program focusing on low to no profile operations abroad. He is the co-owner of Nomadic Research, an outdoor apparel and equipment company. He also founded and co-manages 102250 Inc., which provides global tactical consulting and patented product sales to military and law enforcement special operations communities. Dagan is also a proud husband of 23 years, a proud father of 3, and holds a bachelor's degree from the American Military University in Intelligence Studies. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Semper Fidelis.
Homie Clint, obviously you're regarded very high with him. He's like, dude, you got to get up with my boy and this and that. And, he's always supported, everything I've done, and we've chatted and stayed close over the years. But yeah, he's a good dude. And I think this will be a good chat. But
he's definitely one of my favorite people.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you just like, are you all over the place? You just living out of hotels and stuff, traveling, doing work?
Yeah, can you see my fortress of
Yeah, I
solitude
figured.
back
I was
there?
like,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. I do. I travel quite a bit. I'm in hotels. I got a lot of Hilton Honors points. I don't know if that's gonna be worth it in the end, but at least there's a positive byproduct all that time away. Yeah, I'm just kind of all over the place. And I'm currently in Virginia, and I'll be in Virginia for the better part of a month, and then I'll go home and chill out for a little bit and see what the next the next adventure is.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's probably a lot of stuff you can't share with us. But the stuff you can, as much as you like to open up, we'd appreciate it. We've done this, like, especially with grunts and specialty guys. I kind of like knowing where you came from before you decided you wanted to serve your country, just to, for me personally, just to paint the picture of like what pushed you in there. I mean, I saw you join in 2003 is when you joined.
98.
98. So
Yeah.
why did I think somewhere in your bio it says 2003 to 2014.
Oh yeah, so that would have been 03 was the invasion of Iraq.
That's I got you.
Yeah,
got you.
so there's probably a typo on my my
So you were pre 9/11 then.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
more so what was that like? Because I always love talking to guys that were in before that shit happened, because I'm like, they weren't there for that. And a lot of us, we were still in high school, middle school, some of us before we decided to join. So it was like, that was the reason, that was the call to service for a lot of us, but you guys were already in there, and it was peacetime. So, So what was that like? Or actually, dial back. Let's go into, how you grew up and what that was like, and then what made you want to join.
Absolutely. So grew up in rural Illinois, northwest corner of Illinois, super rural, graduating class, like 68 people, farm town, right? Everybody's a farmer, and it was fantastic, and just like every kid, when you're growing up and growing or going through it, you're like, man, I can't wait to blow this place, like this place sucks. And then, and then you get a little
100%.
older. Yeah, you get a little older, you're like, yeah, this is not too bad. But yeah, dad was a Marine, entire, father's side, but the Van Oosten side, lots of service members, mostly Marines. I've got one uncle that was in the Army, and he always totes the fact that he was the only smart one out of the group. You know what I mean? Younger brother and sister, both Marines. Wife's a Marine, wife's brother's a Marine. Like, yeah, it was you didn't I didn't have to think too hard. That was one of my original goals, and it didn't change, obviously, until I decided to get out. But I did the delayed entry program and all that good stuff, and just couldn't wait to go, because it's all, I mean, I was just hyper focused and centered. There was nothing else. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted to do that. So yeah, went in 98. There's debate between my wife and I whether I left the day of graduation or the next day. I can't remember, but it was as soon as humanly possible. And was a West Coast guy, and yeah, enlisted as an 0311 on a security forces contract, and boot camp, SOI, all that good stuff that we all know about, and fast, or security forces school, gunslinger school as they call it, and ended up in fast company. And yeah, the pre 9/11 was just a continuous training, evolution, unless you were on deployment, whether it be a MEU, or obviously the fast company deployments are, kind of different than from a MEU deployment, but no different than I'm sure it is kind of now. You held the older guys that had, Gulf War or Somalia, combat time, on a very high pedestal, and kind of tried to wring them out like a wet towel for everything they had, knowledge and experience wise, and just kind of waited for the big mish, which didn't happen until 9/11. So
Where were you out of in security force? Where were you stationed at?
I first fast company out of Norfolk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or fake ass SEAL teams, yeah, right. Everybody knows it. Everybody, I can say that because I was there. And it was a fantastic unit. I tell you what, it was a fantastic unit because you had, a platoon size element that had basically, other than toes, you had everything that was organic, to an infantry, company. I mean, mortars, you name it. Like, my stack of weapons cards, for the armory was like the yellow pages, you know what I'm saying? Because you had to be kind of trained on everything because you were such a small platoon. And with the kind of the neo considerations, because God knows what would happen, when Embassy X gets attacked. And so I was very, very fortunate because I got a lot of training, that I probably wouldn't have received had I been an 0311 in a company. Like, you don't need to know how to work that Modus. Like, that's what, that's what the machine gunners are for and stuff like that. Right. So I found it to be very fortunate, to get that experience.
I feel I've never really asked all the security forces guys, I'll say like the majority of them that we got, they were all locked on dudes, and everybody, in an infantry battalion, dudes, you don't pick up rank quick. So you're having corporals come in and they're replacing senior team leaders and this and that. So there's a lot of like bad blood there, but all the dudes that we got that were security forces were fucking locked in. They were good dudes. They knew their jobs. They, a lot of them ended up being team leaders or squad leaders, and they were just fucking great guys, but they got such a hard time for, for being there, especially from the senior guys. And I've never asked a security forces guy, like, what was the climate like when you got to security forces?
It was horrible.
Oh, okay.
It was horrible. It was horrible in the sense of, because and we were stationed there on Norfolk Naval Base, and fast company was tucked way in the back, right next to the airfield. And there was 7 platoons but the platoons were always on rotation. So you may only have 1 or 2 platoons at the, at the barracks at, at any given time. Right. And, you barely ever saw sergeants. Corporals ran the universe. Obviously your platoon sergeant was the devil incarnate. And, senior lance corporal was a legitimate rank, because you were so small, and these are the shenanigans were, at a high level because kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And there's only 40 of you, right? So the hazing rituals were robust. And I'm trying to paint a humorous picture because the first couple of months was just
Yeah.
they would make us Groucho walk or CQB walk, like we couldn't walk upright. We had to wring out the towel, and like if they caught us not wringing out the towel and doing the heel toe like we were in the house, you'd get hazed. And it was all, they're training you, but once you kind of cross that 3 months, 4 months, okay, you're trainable, right. You're part of the crew, and then it kind of lightens up. But it was a horrible environment at first, like checking into any unit at a like I said, I didn't know which way was up when I checked in, right? Boot camp, SOI, security forces school, and they were hyper vigilant. And maybe vigilance isn't the right word. Like everything was to the nth degree, right? Like everything was, almost overboard. Like the only thing I could equate it to, even though I never went to, was like maybe DI school. Mm-hmm. Like the level of, just insanity about every single small detail. And it's because there's only 40 of you. So everybody's kind of, Hawkeyeing everybody else. And, it was good. You know what I'm saying? Like all bad things eventually turn out to be good in some way, shape, or form.
It's like, I don't know why I just had this idea in my mind that like security forces guys were just all buddies, from the get-go. And I don't know if it's like just because of the way they got treated by our senior guys when they got to the fleet, like, just everybody's got beef with everybody, and you're not going to take my job. You don't know what the fleet's like. So I'm thinking, security forces guys just got it cush, but everybody gets hazed in the Marine Corps if you're like combat arms. So
yeah, unbelievably hazed. And when I checked into the fleet, if my wife was on here, she was a Marine as well. If my wife was on here, she would attest. Like I took it, if they were at a 10, I tried to take it to a 15. You know what I mean? And when I showed up to the fleet, it was not well received. That's all, to put it lightly. Like who is this fucking guy? And especially in a Scout Sniper platoon, they were like, man, you better downshift to first gear, or that's not how it works here.
Right.
And thankfully I did. And because I probably would have had a heart attack at the age of 23 or whatever.
You're just redlining the whole time.
All the time. That's just how it was.
Right.
That it literally just is how it was there. So coming to the fleet was a culture shock, to say the least. I did a year and a half, 2 years, give or take. I actually had to request orders out of there because they were going to leave me there for the whole 4 years, and I didn't want to stay the whole time.
Oh shit.
Because everybody talks about the fleet, when you're in security forces, and when you're, like I said, when you're a year and a half in, like I said, you still probably don't really know which way is up, So I was like, well, I want to see what this fleet thing is that everybody's talking about. And I want to go to Scout Sniper School, which they don't have here, and blah, 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 blah. So I called my monitor as a corporal and requested orders and got out of there.
So at what point did you, because we'll get into this, but I know that was a huge portion of your career and probably life, obviously your life still today, but when did you realize you wanted to, be to do with the long boy?
Believe it or not, when I was a kid.
Okay.
My dad did a few tours in Vietnam, and he used to keep all the, the paperbacks, like Dear Mom, a sniper's Vietnam, and blood on the risers, lerp dogs, and Navy SEALs in the Mekong Delta. And he would keep all those paperback books underneath the bed in their bedroom, and I would frequently crawl under there and grab those books and then take them down to my room. And even though I didn't know what I was reading half the time, because I was so young, I predominantly stared at the pictures, and I see these warriors, these guys that are, doing these, things that look horrible, but, romantic at the same time. And, of course, read Hathcock's book. And I just always kind of gravitated towards it, and so the minute I got a chance, that's kind of the direction I wanted to run, and went that way. So yeah, from a very young age. My dad used to joke around and be like, yeah, he wants to be Rambo when he grows up. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be Rambo.
Did you have any, I mean, obviously you got a family full of Marines. Did you do like quite a bit of shooting as a kid, or was that?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of shooting, a lot of hunting. I can remember distinctly the old man, sitting, kneeling, standing, which is the identical way to the way they still, well, I would imagine the way
he's got your little ass snapping in before you even know what that is. You're like, holy shit. That's the cheat code.
Yeah. And he did say, he's like, hey, this is how they taught me, but when you go, pretend like you don't know anything type of deal, And so, yeah, I just kind of took to it very, very early. And luckily, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to try out and then go and be successful at it. So
right on. So you left security forces, you went to 115?
Yep, 1-5.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And what were you Lance, or were you a Lance at this point? Or
I was a corporal. Yeah, I was a corporal, and soon to pick up sergeant, because I had a couple meritorious, remember, super small platoons, right, at fast companies. So I'd picked up a meritorious in boot camp. I had picked up a meritorious while I was there. So I think I hit sergeant before the 3-year mark, which,
holy fuck.
Damn.
Well,
he's a shit hot Marine.
And then I ended up being a sergeant for 7. So you know what I mean?
They're like, we got to slow this down.
The shit definitely buffed out, but I checked into 1-5, and I checked in super early. I got bored on leave. So I checked in super early, and it's, telling it is kind of hilarious, but once again, it kind of lends credence to where fast company mentality was at. Like, I walked up to the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines office, and there was all these Marines just kind of milling about, smoking and fucking around. And I'd never seen, like, that was unheard of, you know what I mean? And so, and because I was a senior guy there, I put him in formation, and I did it in a loud and aggressive manner, and you can imagine these SOI drops were like, the fuck is this? And it was a spectacle. I was making a scene, and because that's where I came from, that's what would happen. And I made such a scene that the sergeant major, his window was open. He stuck his head out the window and was like, hey, of course I about faced, and he's like, who in the fuck are you? And I told him who I was and where I was coming from. And he started going down this list of, do you like, and I didn't know what he was asking me at the time. Like, my concept of the fleet was 0, you know what I mean? And it's one thing they didn't do a very good job of at security forces or fast company, was explaining what the fleet was like, because 90% of your platoon has never been there, right? They're all first termers. Well, he's like, do you like boats? I'm like, they're okay, Sergeant Major. He goes, what about helos? I'm like, they're pretty cool, and he just starts going down the companies, tracks, helos, and he goes, can you shoot? I said, well, I was the honor graduate out of DM school at Fast Company. He was like, come up to the S2, you're going to sniper platoon. And I was like,
damn.
Here we go, So I was like, oh, that was easy, So yeah, and I actually come to find out, one of my platoon mates from Fast Company was in that platoon. So I immediately had like a friend there, and they had an indoc scheduled. They also had a thing called the Calf Ready Challenge, which was like this 52-mile dick dragger or whatever. And Yeah, I was in 1-5 stay, and I stayed there for 3+ years. That was 2000, and I left after the invasion. So,
Okay, so you got there probably right like a year before 9/11 or
oh,
so.
my brain is so bad. Yeah, I mean,
Just timeline wise, you were there a little bit before you realized like it was a possibility you were going to go downrange.
yeah, it was. Yeah. So checked. I want to say January of 2000. I could be wrong. And then 9/11
So
happened.
wait, so you were state platoon. Did you get to go to sniper school?
Oh yeah. Yep.
How long did you have to wait before they sent you?
3 months.
Oh
Three
shit.
months. Yeah. So our platoon sergeant was he was a Ranger graduate. Super good dude. And his philosophy was, if you're in the field Monday to Friday, you can't get in trouble. Right. So we would just basically, we would insert Monday night, we'd get an op order or whatever, you get your op order, you do your patrol order, you'd brief, you'd insert on Monday night, you'd extract Friday morning, you'd clean guns, you'd get your next op order that you worked on over the weekend, and around and around and around we go, So it was just Monday to Friday, or Monday to Friday morning, you were in the field, and they would just frago the senior members of the platoon, and the platoon sergeant would just frag you from mission set to mission set, and you just spent the whole time in the field.
Yeah.
And after a couple months, like I said, I want to say roughly 3, they were like, okay, you and you are going to school.
Wow.
And so we went to school, and that was obviously everything you've ever heard of and worse sometimes. And I was fortunate enough to graduate by the skin of my teeth, and they sent 4 of us out of the platoon. Of course, they give you the speech like, hey, we're sending 4 of you. Statistically speaking, or historically speaking, 2 or 3 of you are coming home. Don't be the person that comes home. And I was like, oh, this is great, fantastic. Who's it going to be? But 3 of us graduated, and only 1 guy ended up having to be recycled.
Gotcha.
So we had a pretty good group, and I completely attest that to, like I said, the fact that he was so heavy on the field time. Like, there wasn't a lot of fucking around. You know what I mean? Like, it was a pretty serious platoon, and state platoons, I'll say this, you got some platoons that are pretty, the not fucking around crew. And then there's some that are, I just want to be left alone and, kind of kick it. You know what I mean? And everything in between. Ours was definitely on the, this is serious business side of the house. So I completely attest that to, to how I graduated the first time going through.
I remember seeing the first time I saw a state platoon like actually doing shit besides like beating fucking chemis and like making their ghillie suits out in the like courtyard was like dudes just laying in the prone. And I know I kind of joked about this with you through text the other day, but I didn't know what the fuck they were doing, because they didn't. I've seen people like snapping in on the barrels, the white barrels, before the rifle range, but these guys are just laying there.
They were
And
sketchy.
some of them had binos. Yeah, they're doing range cards, and they're fucking like just like searching for shit. Their senior guys let like pen caps and stuff.
Yeah, they're
like
doing an obs exercise.
And I was like, asked one of the senior dudes, I'm like, what the fuck are they doing just laying out there?
Yeah.
Like I've seen machine gunners do gun drills and mortars and all that, but like they had nothing, just their notepads. And I'm like, they're just fucking laying around. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
But then, of course, very useful skills you develop doing that, I'm sure. But yeah, I just thought that was wild. I'm like, these guys they just watch.
Yep, just lay in the prone, stay in the glass, stay on the gun. You're just they're obs exercises, 10 items. You better be able to find them, and that was a daily occurrence. You would do an obs a day, you would do a couple kims a day. Like, if you weren't in the field, and my platoon specifically, I can't speak for other platoons, it was classes all day. You know what I mean? Like, it was a very studious, like, you were never not expected to be able to test and or teach, you know what I'm saying, at any given time, right? Depending on your status in the platoon. If you were a guy that hadn't gone to school yet, a professionally instructed gunman, or a pig, as we call them, that's all you did was study. If if you weren't PTing, if you weren't in the field, it was in classes or doing, practical exercises, and it all in an effort to make sure that when you did get to go to school, you were successful on the first time, because it was such a high attrition rate, right?
Gotcha.
And obviously it made you better at your job.
I got a question about, I mean, I know you obviously spent a long stint of your career instructing, but so I'm no fucking, expert shooter by any means, but I mean, I was an expert, but as far as like shooting from elevation goes in Afghanistan, I'm sure a lot of guys were involved in that. Virginia, I mean, I know there's some hills, but it can't even be close to what California has in 1.5. So like when you went, how much time did you get to shoot from like elevation, like real elevation? Because I know that plays a big factor in, ballistics and all that.
Yes, it's a fantastic question, and man, we could go down a rabbit hole, and I'll be the first one to say it. There are two types of snipers. There are artistic snipers, and then there are scientific snipers, and you can always tell when you come in, because the artistic guy will be painting something or working on his ghillie suit, and the scientific guy will be over there with ballistic charts,
Yeah.
zeros and ones, beautiful mind type shit, right? And I was definitely an artistic type of dude, right? As far as if I had to pick a side. Your atmospherics obviously come into it, and especially back then, we didn't really have a way to measure, like, a lot of the things that we were taught that were gospel back in the day, due to no fault, it was just society and technology, and so we kind of had general rules of thumb, and some of those general rules of thumb over the course of 2 decades, with the advancements of technology, in the ammunition, in the barrels, in the weapons, in your, ballistic computers, proved that we were not only were we wrong, I mean, we couldn't be more wrong, right? And so it's hard for me to answer that. I was back in the day, you had general rules of thumb for angle or high angle shooting,
right?
But you would have had to go to Hawthorne, Nevada, or borderline have one of your buddies hold your feet over the side of, a 50-story building in LA to have those, rules come into effect.
Gotcha.
So what you were cognizant of it, but you rarely found yourself in a position where it mattered. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was with what we know. What we didn't know then, and we know now, that your elevation, your atmospherics, and your, or I shouldn't say we didn't know it at all back then, but we had no idea how much the density, altitude, and the atmospherics played into the bullets, the path. And now, like I said, I stepped away from the sniper community for 2.5, 3 years, and when I came back,
you're like,
I didn't even know what they were talking about.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like that, I was like, holy shit. It was like, I had a rotary phone one day, and then when I came back, it's iPhone 13, and I'm, like, I'm a boomer, like how do you turn this thing on? And I had to play a lot of catch up, without a shadow of a doubt. I was like, holy shit, so it moved, and it hasn't stopped. It's moving. Like the guys today and their cognitive load, it's impressive. Not saying that, we weren't impressive, but what they have to consume, and in the amount of knowledge that they have to have now, like, all we had to do is memorize a fair amount of shit, be pretty good at math, and, don't quit, kind of be a sucker for punishment. Like these guys now, you borderline need a computer science degree, just to keep up, it's a lot of data.
Me and Jose were just talking about that. I mean, even with the, I was a 51, so I had demo shit and rocket stuff on top of the, the regular rifleman stuff to learn too. But I'm just like, man, how many hours we spent drilling and learning that shit. I'm like, now what the do they have now? Like you're spending nonstop in class learning all this shit, all these gadgets. You got fucking drone guys, tablet.
Right.
It's like, how are they even doing it and maintaining the physical side of it too? You know, it's like, yeah, that's incredible. But I mean, I feel like, you know, the 20 plus years that we had, you know, for those wars and stuff, like all the data that came out of that, especially with like, you know, from your MOS field, like, you know, you don't really know how shit plays out until you start sending rounds. And then you're like making adjustments. I mean, I was listening to a guy talk the other day about, I think it was like 2009-10 time frame, and he was a scout sniper in Afghanistan, and he said that when they showed up, like they had such minimal equipment and supplies, they were delinking 7.62 for the sniper. They didn't even have sniper ammo.
I believe
And
it.
he's like, you know, we didn't plan for a scenario like this coming in. You're like, what the fuck do you mean we don't have ammo for the sniper rifles? Like, and he's like, so whoever they were ripping out with, like, was giving them mags because they were thinking that they had leftover shit, and it was fucking 7.62 link in the mags he was giving them.
Mm-hmm.
And dude's like, what are the ballistics like on this? I don't know. Like, we didn't fucking shoot this fucking trash through our rifles. So like they're having to figure all that out. And it's like, I'm just saying over those 20 years, like how much, I mean, I just feel like growth is exponential for collecting data on what works, what doesn't work. And then that's, you know, it just keeps snowballing from there.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And I can't pinpoint the time when I had kind of this epiphanical moment, but anybody that spends enough time in this job will attest to what I'm saying, is that you spend, whether it's, and I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers, like let's say like I was in that 1-5 sniper platoon, you know, went to urban, went to advanced, went to mountain, like, you know, I was schooled out, right? And I knew what I knew. I was effective out to range. I didn't know it, you know, like as well as some guys, and then obviously there were some guys that didn't know it as well as me, right? But I like to call it functionally dangerous. You know, like everybody likes to say subject matter expert. Okay, well, we were subject matter experts, but we were functionally dangerous and everything, right? But I really didn't start to really learn the craft until I started teaching it. And then halfway through teaching it, you come to this epiphanical moment where it's like, okay, know what matters, when it matters, and when it doesn't. Because there's so much, it's a bottomless pit, especially when you get into the ballistic side of the house. It's such a bottomless pit of what ifs that, you know, and the science guys, and God bless them, will plunge head deep into that to try and drill it down to the, you know, the 18th decimal point. But you got to know what matters when it doesn't matter. And most of the time, within ranges that we were typically, and this is, you know, people are rolling over in their graves as I say this, you know, it isn't all that one shot, one kill, 1,000 yards away, 1,200 yards away. You know, we want it to be like, let's get it to where it's, you know, as far out as we can push, you know, scientifically and physically with the laws of physics, push that round.
Right.
You know, but everything I did was between 2 and 7.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously every situation is different. I'm not discounting the, you know, the push for knowledge, but it's like, hey man, don't sink yourself into stalling in the door. You know what I'm saying? Like if you got linked ammo and that's all you got, I bet you know, you may not hit them right where you're aiming at, but you're probably still going to hit them. Right. If that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. You're going to make it work. I mean, I feel like obviously without living through that, I feel like that career, that MOS is like literally all about making adjustments, right? Not just to your rifle or, you know, glass, but to the environment, to your positioning. And, you know, so I feel like that's nothing new. It's just probably was a curveball for them. Like, what the fuck do you mean you don't have fucking precision ammo for us? Like,
it would be horrible. It was horrible. I feel for those guys. And I had a similar instance. I had a very similar situation when the rifle that I went through school with and I lived with in 1-5 was a bolt action Remington 700 with a fixed power neural scope. You know what I mean? Like,
damn.
a deer hunting rifle that was very, very effective. And I knew that gun backwards and forwards. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if it was 2 days or 2 weeks. I don't remember, but the M40A3 was coming out and they wanted them fielded in combat. And I was the chief scout for 1-5, and I'll never forget it. The platoon sergeant came over and he was like, and my platoon sergeant was fantastic. His name was Edward Zapata. And he said, "Hey," he's like, I'm giving you a new rifle, you know? And I was kind of like, look around to see if anybody else is around. And I was like, the fuck you are, you know, like, I'm not staff sergeant, you know what I mean? I was like, you know, this brand new, this thing's out of the box. Like, it just, you know, still smells like Quantico. You know, I said, I don't have any data for that gun. That gun's not broke in. That gun's not anything. He goes, go take 20 rounds and zero it. I don't want to hear another word about it.
Damn.
You know, so I went with this brand, you know, and I mean, I felt it was, you know, it's like somebody canceled Christmas. I was like, I might as well not even go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I might as well stay here. And, but guess what? When it came time, I put a 0 on it. And when it came time to it, it worked, you know, it worked. So, you know, you just gotta figure, you gotta know it well enough to know what matters when it doesn't matter, and, or when it matters and when it doesn't. And, you know, just, I mean, it's the Marine Corps, man. Do more with less and just get it done, you know?
Yeah. Hell yeah. So how was the invasion for you?
Personally, very, very frustrating at first. We pushed so hard, so fast. And you think you have like, you know, as much TV and movies and, you know, historians or amateur historians as we are, when it comes to, you know, combat in the Marine Corps and this and that, or, you know, all branches of service. Like, so I had this idea in my head of how it was going to be, you know, and guess what? Ever been, you know, I think I was 22, you know, ever been 22, happened to me once, you know what I mean? Like I was super frustrated because I didn't feel like I was getting to do everything I was capable of doing. Right. Well, guess what? It's not about you, you know, and I didn't know that at the time. You know, self-centered 22-year-old, you know, all I cared about was me, my team, and getting the job done. And we're just moving so fast. You know, we were just moving so fast that, you know, we weren't using RNS assets. It's not an ideal, you know, a mechanized movement, you know, at that speed is obviously not an ideal place for, you know, a sniper. But we got in where we could fit in. We did work when we could do work, you know, and obviously once we got to Baghdad, it kind of shifted, you know, then we were kind of the main, I don't want to say the main effort, but we were much more active once we got in that static, you know, position at the presidential palace. So all those frustrations ended up, you know, obviously being null and void because we went to work, you know, once we got there. Very, very fortunate that the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, you know, from top to bottom, and that's not just me saying that, like, we had a very good battalion staff. We had a very good battalion commander. Our company commanders were, you know, with the exception of maybe one, you know, which just boiled down to personality differences, were like we were, it was good. You know what I mean? It was good. And I really, really enjoyed my time. Obviously there's times where it wasn't awesome, you know, and none of it's really awesome when you're there doing it. But in retrospect, I was very, very thankful for the experience, you know, because being a pre 9/11 guy, it was kind of like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, whether this goes on for another 5 years or 5 minutes, like,
right,
at least we've done it. You know what I mean? Like, you've checked the box. And I know that sounds ridiculous when I say that, but it's a thing and we all know it's a thing, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So yeah, once the box was checked, it was kind of like, okay, now let's see how this is gonna go, you know?
do you feel like when you guys were there, do you feel like, so like when we were in Afghanistan in 2009, our stay guys were pretty much with our sister company Echo, who was further south, like all of them were, right? Did you guys bounce around between the different companies, or were you just with one that was like kind of the main effort company, or How did that work?
That's a good question. So usually the way it works is your stay platoon is, and now we're talking my time frame. I won't speak for, because Jesus, I've heard they got canceled, not too, or did away with or whatever,
Yeah,
a couple months ago. You had your you were either an H&S company under ADCON to the intel shop, or you were with weapons platoon. Right. And when I was there, we were always under the intel shop. And so each of your team, your teams, you had 4-man teams. And so Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, so on and so forth, so each team was attached to a company. And then you had what was called the MSPF. And I don't even know if they still have that or call that the Maritime Special Purpose Force. Okay. I don't know if that's a thing anymore or not, but your urban sniper graduates would, and your senior, your chief scout, which like I said, I was a chief scout at the time, they were your MSPF, and that would be the team. If you were on a MEU, they would attach to the either the force or the battalion recon, and just attach to them and so on and so forth. Well, I was the MSPF team leader, and my team was obviously the MSPF team, and there's no MSPF mission. So I can remember my platoon sergeant before we, crossed the line of departure, because I think we sat there for a month, you know what I mean? Like it felt like 10 years, but we sat there for a month in the tents and the whatever. And he came in one day and was like, hey, there's no MSPF mission. So you and the guys are just going to ride with me in the log truck. And, and once again, I kind of looked around and was like, negative. No disrespect. And him and I had a very good relationship. If he's listening, I mean, we had a very, very good relationship. So I could kind of behind closed doors kind of get away with that. But I was like, you're on crack if you think I'm getting in the back of that high back, as we get ready to cross the LOD. Well, I had been there for long enough that I had a really good not reputation, but I would hope reputation, but I had a good rapport with most of the company commanders. And more importantly, I had a very good rapport with the CAT platoon. So I embedded myself. I just walked up to the CAT platoon sergeant and the company commander for CAT, and I was like, hey, you got room? And they're like, fuck yeah, we got room. They're like, we don't have room for your whole team, but as we deplete ammo and make room in the vehicles, give us a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, who knows, you can bring your whole team. And if there's one thing I kind of regret as a team, because we'd been a team for the better part of 2.5 years, like we were tight. It was a very, very tight team. And when I went and had to tell them that I was going, in the lead element, and they were just going to have to kind of wait. It didn't go over well at all. It was a bad deal. People got emotional, myself included. And they felt like I was leaving them, and for all intents and purposes, I guess I kind of was. I was being selfish, but it didn't take very long to make space for them, So within short order, every vehicle had one member of my team in it, in an empty seat, if you will. And so we kind of moved with the CAT element for the invasion.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in that situation, though, it's like you couldn't have sent them first, because then what if something, you know what I mean? Like if you wanted to get your team into that, you couldn't have been like, you guys go, and then fucking possibly some war event happens, like they do. And now it's like, why wouldn't you go first? But
yeah,
anyway,
it still eats at me a little bit, but it all kind of buffed out, I wasn't going to go. I couldn't fathom, getting in the back. I just couldn't, I couldn't fathom it, and that's not me trying to be a tough guy. That's not like, I'm here, let's do it. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit out, that's just, you make your decisions and you live with your decisions. Right.
Yeah.
So we're all still friends, close friends to this day. So
that's good.
Yeah.
You didn't burn them too bad, or, anyway, they got over it if you did.
Yeah.
I gotta,
yeah, that was that. It was, not a lot of food, had to ration the chow quite a bit, constantly on the move,
Were you guys, were you guys mop suits, or?
Yeah, so everybody was mopped up. Everybody was mopped up, and I ended up shit canning my flak jacket and my helmet. It's just because I had modified gear and equipment, and because of course, at the Stapleton, you can't just wear normal shit. You got to have high speed shit, right? And so I had modified equipment that wouldn't accommodate my flak, right? And I just flat out didn't like my helmet, and back then you could get away with it. You could be like, oh, I can't get in the best shooting position when I have this Kevlar on. And so I, tactically lost, those two pieces of equipment. And but other than that, yeah, we were all mopped up, flacked up, helmet up, all the whole 9 yards, you know. And I caught a lot of shit for that for the entire invasion. But I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it. What are they gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Like, how long is it gonna take you to get me a replacement?
yeah,
And I'm gonna be out of here before that. So
yeah. The platoon sergeant's like, "What'd you do with your flak and helmet?" I was like, "I threw it away." You know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
shit!
right? Yeah.
got lost in a movement. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did y'all know? One of my mentor just sent me a YouTube video. He sent both of us a YouTube video of General Al Gray talking about maneuver warfare. Did y'all know about that at that time period? About
No.
how the invasion was going to go, about maneuver warfare in general?
No, I mean, maybe some guys did. I didn't, you know what I mean? And the one advantage of being the chief scout or a team leader in the stable tune was you would frequently be in the battalion level meetings. But even being in the battalion level meetings, like, there's a certain part of it where they're kind of talking over your head. You know what I mean? And then the other part of it is I'm just listening for the part that pertains to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so what my understanding of what we were going to do, and not step by step, but obviously it was get to Baghdad as soon as humanly possible, secure Baghdad, the end. Like, don't fuck around between here and there. Like, we would basically drive through contact. You know what I mean? It just, like, don't stop. It's not worth it. Which at the time I was like, let's stop and again, not trying to be callous or sound like a tough guy about it, but I'm like, why? Like, what? There's bad guys back there that we need to smoke. Like, what are they?
Let's clean this up. Let's clean this up on the way in a little bit.
And again, B-22, B-22, and then I'm 22, and then there's General Mattis and whoever else. They're like, now at 43, I'm like, yeah, no shit. Don't worry about Squad X that's just borderline harassing fire. You know what I mean? Like, get to the objective. So my understanding was, even though I understood it, that was half of my frustration. I was like, why aren't we eliminating as we go? You know what I mean? Well, it's because you're 22 and you're a sergeant and you really don't know shit. Like, we got to get to Baghdad, and then then the fun starts, and we'll kind of gain a foothold and then start to clean it up from there on out.
Right on. Damn.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I know I was a hothead, always looking for contact. And my squad leader, he's like, you need to chill out, man. It'll find you. Don't wish for that shit. It'll find you.
Was he from just wise beyond his years, or
he was a senior guy, man. He came from 1-3, and they didn't go to Iraq. They went to the Korangal Valley.
Yep.
And they did work right at the time whenever the MSOP got kicked out.
Yep.
MARSOC got kicked out.
Yep.
And he ended up getting out, coming back in. And during Operation Kandjar, our 2009 deployment, some shit went down. They got kicked out of country.
Yep.
And he eventually, what was his name? Major General Tryon dropped the charges, so that they were good to go. And then he deployed with us in 2011, but he was killed.
Oh, fuck, man, that's unfortunate. But to your point, I don't think anybody, like, the only person that's ever gonna say that is somebody that's experienced it.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't have paid me to, you couldn't have paid me not to run towards contact or seek battle or what, you know what I mean? Like, but then once you get it, you're like, oh, this is okay. That's what this is like. Roger that, like, okay, maybe I've checked that box. Maybe I kind of liked it. Maybe I didn't, but yeah, that's, wise behind his ears because he had experience. Like, trust me, a minute of combat sometimes is worth a lifetime, like,
Yeah.
don't be anxious. You can only chase the dragon so many times. Every now and again, the dragon will come back and bite you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Gunfights all day, man. Fucking
yeah.
IEDs now.
Right? Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah. At least make it a two-way street. You know what I mean? Like, at least fight a little bit fair, but I don't blame them. I don't blame them, like, I don't blame them. Like, what would we do? Could you imagine? You know what I mean? Like, one of the things when we went through with 1.5, it was just destruction. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was, just everything was getting destroyed. You know what I mean? I think I wrote it in my journal. I was like, this is like the fist of God just rolling through just everything in our path. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was kind of overwhelming, right? And I went through this series of emotions where I was like, this is exactly what we should do. Hold on. There needs to be some discrimination here. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just scorched earth to, yes, it does need to be scorched earth. You know what I mean? Like, I just went round and round and round. Because never having seen, an infantry battalion, just make its way, you know what I mean? Like like, like the nothing in the never ending story. And I'm dating myself, but you know what I mean? Like, if you've seen that movie, just this, I was, impressive in some ways and kind of like, holy shit, I don't blame them for those tactics. I mean, what other choice did they have? You know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely not giving them, kudos, because fuck that. But I mean, what else would you do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
well, that's like whenever and I've talked about this before, like whenever we went into Ramadi 2007, 2008, it wasn't a kinetic deployment at all for us. But like, I remember it was, my first deployment, I was fucking boot, shaved head and shit. And I'm rolling and we're like rolling in on 7 tons. And I'm looking at these buildings, dude. And I'm like, what the fuck happened here?
Yeah.
You're talking about building, like it looked like, the city was collapsing. Every bullet or every building had bullet holes in it, missing pieces of it. And like, we're just pulling up into this shit. And I'm like, what was that like? Like living through that part of this? Cause at this point, we're rolling in. We get to our OPs, like company OPs in the main fob, like in the city. We're in the fucking city, like holding those buildings. So that says something in itself, right? And it's like, I'm like, holy, what's this going to be like?
It was nuts, man. It was crazy, and obviously, and not nuts like, oh no shit, there I was. You know what I mean? Like, and I used to joke around all the time, and this is a joke, but it's close to it. I mean, if somebody fired a wrist rocket out the window, then 2 tanks would just level.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it was just, like, come on, it's not even fair. There was just, it was an open, free.
Yeah.
If you thought you had contact, just start suppressive fire. It was just nuts, man. It was crazy. And that was what was super frustrating for me because by the time I would dismount and start to get my bearings about me to try and do my job, there wasn't even a job to be done. You know,
I feel stupid for not knowing this because I know, like in Fallujah, there was a whole ton of psyop they did. Dropping of papers were coming through. If you're here, your enemy combatant. Did they do any of that?
1000%. Yeah, I still have one. As a matter
they
of
did
fact.
do that.
Yeah, Mattis basically, and I'll never remember all of it, but basically he was like, I didn't bring tanks. I didn't, which is not entirely true, but he's like, I didn't bring tanks. I didn't bring artillery. I'm begging you, And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
years,
remember.
you
Yeah.
guys seen that one?
Yeah.
They were everywhere, bro. They were everywhere. They were everywhere. They had done a significant leaflet campaign. Like you couldn't, they were everywhere.
Mhm.
And basically like if you don't fight, we won't destroy this entire place. But if you fight, they won't recognize this place, and that's definitely, you think about it from, you know, we had a pretty significant break between, Somalia, Desert Storm Somalia, like that was the first major, right? So motherfuckers were itching, you know what I mean? They were itching.
I mean, I feel, and I hate, me and Jose have gone into like the, on the moral injury fucking view, what I'm trying to say is like, I feel like what you're saying, just watching this overkill of firepower being used against something, minuscule, but at the same time, it's like you were kind of warned, right? Like, so it's not like, fuck, this is like too much. We're doing too much. It's like they were warned that if people were remain behind and you weren't a fighter, you're gonna kind of be caught up in it.
Yeah, and there's a very interesting book I had to read for school called "Bomb in My Garden," which is I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but Saddam's chief, nuclear scientist, or make me a nuclear bomb, all this good shit. Well, one of the great parts in that book was him talking about, basically the Ministry of Affairs, and I'm butchering it, like basically what we would consider the White House press secretary on the TV in Iraq, in Baghdad, being like, the Americans are not here. And then he turns around and there's an Abrams rolling past his window. You know what I mean? So like, like he 100%, it's not a direct quote from the book, but it's pretty close, so, and that was definitely a thing where the Iraqi people kind of didn't know whether to shit or go blind. You know what I mean? Like they've got their state sponsored, propaganda machine saying it's all bullshit, but then they look down the road and here comes an infantry battalion. So it's like a town that doesn't have a tornado siren.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By the time you see that tornado, you're fucked. It's already, you know what I mean? Like all you can do is throw your hands in the air and hope for the best, And so, that's one thing I will say. It wasn't indiscriminate, and this isn't me trying to clean it up. It wasn't indiscriminate for no reason. It wasn't overkill. But if you picked the fight, it got stopped right now. You know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of, other than the push into Baghdad, as we were going, there wasn't a lot of prolonged back and forth. They give a little, we would destroy whoever and whatever it was, in rapid fashion. So, they just, it's, I used to, it would be like, a WWF superstar, fighting an eighth grader. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
the scales are just, it's not fair, but that was my take on it anyways.
Yeah.
We've come a long ways from then. Now it's like fucking, I gotta call the fucking general before I fucking fire. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. In 2009, that became an issue. There was a Marine Corps Times article and a couple of NPR articles that were written about the ROE not. I mean, what the adjutant used to come out say that the ROE was designed for us to help us, but it didn't feel that way. At least, a guy got a rifle. Is that that's PID? Take him out or not, right? And if you take him out, you're gonna get fucking charged.
Yeah.
That's
Look, I mean, luckily we didn't really experience a lot of that. And I definitely heard stories of that being a significant issue, a significant issue in the later parts. Like our only ROE challenges were, it went from very, very loose to very, very tight and everything in between, and in a very, very within like a day or two. which was confusing to us as, the guys that are pulling the triggers. Like, wait a minute, yesterday it was anything goes within reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's a military age male? If they're strong enough to pick up the weapon, then you're green light. I'm like, okay, that's pretty loose. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to, hey man, just try and shoot the weapon out of their hand or fire a warning shot or what, you know what I mean? Like some pretty kind of ridiculous shit, but once again, I wasn't quote unquote meant to understand it. I just, yeah, Roger that, and so that was very frustrating, you know what I mean? But it was never to the point of what you're referencing where, hey, they're shooting at us a lot. Are we good to go now? You know what I mean? Like I've heard some horrible stories about, the ROEs kind of really getting in the way, which is unfortunate. I'm glad we didn't have to, deal with that, at all, but it's I think when you're moving that fast, and the things are happening as quickly as it was. And, I think those things are kind of, once you start to fall into, that presence, you know what I mean? Like that, occupational force where guys got time, and I don't, not guys like us, but when the brass has time to sit up there and think about PR and optics and, coin operations and, hey, how is this affecting, and the guys on the ground are who suffer, because it's, hey man, they're not thinking about any of that. They're not thinking about any of that ever, so yeah, it's a challenge.
100%.
Do you what was it like coming home then for you guys, being the invasion boys? You know what I mean? You had to, I feel like, and I'm not, trying to boost us or anything, but it kind of felt that way for us in 2009. We're part of this big troop surge shit. And even though the war in Afghanistan has been going on forever, like this is the big push and we were the ones to set it off. So like, and it almost felt like like Camp Lejeune was just like in support of us.
Sure.
Like we were the only East Coast unit to go to that. So it was kind of like, we felt like kings coming back to a degree. Everybody's getting fucking trashed and, doing whatever.
Yeah. All the tattoo parlors were booked solid.
Yeah.
Everybody's got fucking 6 months of pay saved up. And no, we were the same way. Like it was pretty surreal. We, obviously you guys went through it. We came home and, the whole base was, line streets and all the, it was crazy, right? It was in a good way. And lots of hugs, lots of tears, all this good stuff, you know what I mean? And then they kind of, and it was badass, it was like, holy shit, we just, we just, now we're home, and they put us on ice for a month. Like they wouldn't let us go home. I don't know if they did the same thing to you guys or not, but like, hey, you don't have to come into work. There's a recall roster, but you're not going on leave yet. Right. So, and I don't know if that was a good idea or a bad idea, because I don't know what you guys did, but I know what we did. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we don't have to go into work. We just have to monitor our phones, like, all we did was party. You know what I mean? We just sat around and partied and talked about what, all the things, even though it was last week, like, remember that one time, and, like it was years ago or some shit. And, we just kind of chilled out for that month, and then they let us go home. And then that's when it got weird, at least that's when it got weird for me, was going home, and you kind of, the atypical, what's it like coming home stories. Cause I don't know. And you guys, you guys will tell me, I didn't want any special treatment, but I didn't want to be ignored either, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to talk about it, but I also didn't want to feel like, hey, nothing just happened for the past however long,
acknowledge what I did, but just don't ask me details, kind of deal.
Which is a real, if you reverse that if you switch hats with a civilian, because all they want to do is hear about it or ask you about it or thank you for it or whatever, and that's not wrong. Like
Yeah,
they're
and that's also not like their fault though, right? Because they don't fucking know. Like they're just extremely interested in what you did, and they don't like that would be like that would be like it's almost like asking somebody like what was it like if you've never been in a car accident? Like well, you just got in a fucking terrible car accident. Some people may have died in that car accident, and you just come up and you're like, dude, what was that like for you? You know, like you don't do that shit. You don't do
yeah,
that.
and you're
But
right. It's not their fault. They don't. How could they possibly realize? You know what I mean? And they can't, right? And it's a difficult situation for both parties, right? Because
yeah.
we're not wrong, they're not wrong. It's just the apex of kind of awkwardness, you know. And sometimes I would or not embellish, but indulge, and sometimes I'd be like, not right now. You know what I
Right.
mean? You know, kind of give a little, take a little, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's such a tricky one too, because if you join I feel like from my perspective anyway, like, I love this country. I still do, and I did then. And that's why we join. That's why the majority of people that I know or I'm friends or compatriots with, that's why they joined, because they wanted to do something significant with themselves. And I think it's not until later when the bad light starts seeping through where you can kind of like it can kind of change the way you look at it or looked at it. But it's like if you think back to who you were then and why you made that decision, that's fucking wholesome as fuck. Like you're a kid, you're a young man that was hopefully raised in the right manner to care about the place, your surroundings, and the people in your community too. And you're like, well, fuck, man, like I feel like I'm useful, like I care about other people. This is what you do. This is what we do. And then you go do it. Maybe it doesn't, pan out the way you were hoping for. Maybe it's way worse. Maybe it's, cakewalk for you. But then you start looking at it, and then people that didn't go through those things start having opinions about it. And you're like, well, was this good or was this like bad? And do I feel like, was I just used by the system? Like,
Sure.
I think a lot of people deal with that struggle, like to where they don't know, they feel proud about it, like they feel proud about serving their country, whether they entirely agree with what they were asked to do. That doesn't really matter, but that's my opinion to have about my own circumstance, not yours, not anyone else's, right?
Yep.
Um,
I, I
oh, yeah,
I agree 100%. I went through many, many years where there was basically like two sides of me. There was the side where it's like, hey, guys and people like me, guys like me, we went because most people can't or don't want to, right? And that's a noble endeavor. You know, I used to say all the time, like, whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. Like it's my job. It's what I signed up to do. I'm not gonna cloud my cognitive load with, do I think this is right or not? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And that can be drilled down and argued upon too. You know what I mean?
right.
But as a jarhead, and I was as jarhead as I think jarheads can get, I just, hey man, the why or the that doesn't matter to me. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like I signed up, this is what I signed up to do. If it's time to go do it, roger that. You know, almost kind of like a willful blissness when it came to
Yeah,
it. And then the other half of me got extremely bitter and extremely angry and very destructive because I started having animosity as the years went on, and as the body count and the injuries and the this and the that, and I would, and I didn't go around, choking people out by any stretch of imagination, but I'd be like in the back of my head, whether I had a smile on my face or not, as I'm talking to somebody who's running off with the mouth in a good way or a bad way or what have you, you guys know what I'm talking about. I'd be like, you've never had a fucking inch of skin in the game. Like,
yeah,
well, you don't rate to say anything ever. You know what I mean? And I struggled with those two sides, because both sides are kind of right. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, it's an all volunteer force. There is no draft. You know what I mean? Like, we are the people that should go do those things because we're capable and willing and so on and so forth. And we love this country. And, and the other side's true, the other side's true too. Like, hey man, watch your mouth. You know what I mean? Like, I think you need to have a little skin in the game if you're going to vote, but that's not how the country works.
Yeah.
So, what do? You just smile and be like, yep, cool. Have a nice day, whatever, but it ate at me for a long, long time,
Yeah.
1973, man. I go back and forth with that a lot, just because the numbers are in our faces now, right? So 20 years, $9 trillion. You have over 30,000 suicides.
Right.
You have close to 1 million people that have been diagnosed with some type of mental illness as a result of those wars. And then just where the country is headed, it doesn't look good in terms of like the infrastructure. And like it is noble, right, to do what we did. But at the same time, it's like, where the fuck were the elders at, right? So they forfeited their seat at Grand Strategy, and they allowed questionable conflicts to take place. And, was Iraq justified, not justified? It doesn't matter. We still did it, right?
Yeah, we still did it.
But that should have been, I mean, your 18-year-old, your 19-year-old's not going to be thinking about grand strategy. They're not going to be thinking about the operational or the national trajectory. They're not going to be thinking about how China at the fucking time was looking at how we did Gulf War I, and they're fucking adapting how, they're not thinking about all that shit.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I really don't know. I mean, that's why I'm still fucking salty about Afghanistan today, is that. No, go ahead.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think you deserve it, right? Like, we deserve it. Like, I deserve it. I hope I don't stretch this out too long, but you had significant skin in the game. You deserve to feel that way, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you deserve to feel. I mean, we were talking about before we started recording. Like, it fucked me up for weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if I dwell on it, and if I start drilling down on it, even now, it'll start to make me get pretty cross. But oh man, this isn't a cop-out statement, but nothing you did or nothing I did or nothing anybody did for that matter was not to their fullest, was not what they were asked to do. Everybody did their job and what they, to the fullest extent, of their abilities, so on and so forth. And I have zero, fucking less than zero amount of control over what goes on in the Beltway and those decisions that are made. You know what I mean? And it's not like I'm giving them a free pass. I will, we'll always forever hold, kind of hold them, in contempt for how they handled that. But I can't, at this time of my life, if I can't control it, then I try not to let it bother me, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because it'll just, I've been in that place where just angry all the time, just always angry about something, or a multitude of things. You know what I mean? Angry. And once I started to realize that most of the things I was angry about were outside of my control, and I kind of started to let those things go. I didn't forget, I didn't forgive. I just started to separate or control how it affected me emotionally and physically. I hope that makes sense. It's not that I approve of what happened. I just don't let it ruin my day anymore. You know what I mean? I just choose not to focus on it hard. Because otherwise I think it would eat you alive, and I'm sure it is eating people alive. And, what's the solution?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the solution? What would make you feel better? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously there's probably some things that we won't say out loud on this podcast, but within the realm of reality, what would bring you solace?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I have something to add to that because I think there's a ton of people in our community out there that are still like seeking out that acknowledgement, right? For what they did. And it's, decade or better ago when you did that, but it's like, if you feel like inside yourself that was the pinnacle, like the best version of yourself that you would ever be, you're always going to miss that, right? Like if you're not continually trying to better yourself, you're going to constantly look at that version of yourself and hold that on a pedestal and always want people to acknowledge that version of you too, even like as time goes on. And that's us, like that's in us. And I know some people are I hate saying like damaged, but some people are really affected by things they experienced, and that's all they have, right? Because now they're not that, they can't find a way through it, they can't, whether they've tried or not, or they're stuck hiding and trying to just disappear, they're always referencing that version. So it's like, how do you change that? How do you make somebody feel worthy, especially now after, and I hate saying this, I'm not making like excuses or anything, but like after the ISIS situation in Iraq and after fucking the drawdown in the botched withdrawal, it's like now the entire fucking, well, not the entire, because most Americans don't pay attention to fucking anything, but the ones that did, that had no skin in the game, now they see this fucking terrible, because all the talking heads on fucking main media are saying how fucking big of a debacle this is. Now they all have a standpoint that the past 20 years in Afghanistan, Iraq, which Iraq already went through that with the whole ISIS situation, but Afghanistan was going through it with this. We're saying it was all for nothing. And it's like, you don't say that. You not just don't say that to me because you don't know, but I know the efforts that we did there, and people lost their sons and daughters there. You can't just say it was for nothing. And I always say this, and I know it kind of sounds like you say, it sounds like cold or callous, but it's like the people that don't know what type of humans like Al Qaeda or the Taliban or ISIS were, you like, when we talk about valuing human life, these people do not at all. So in my opinion, they don't deserve to breathe the air we do. They're monsters, truly evil people. It's not just religion, it's not whatever you believe. These people do not care about their own, communities or anything like that. I mean, we've all seen examples of how fucking heinous the shit. So no matter how many or how little were erased, that was all worth it to me. Because that's evil fucking walking and breathing, and they don't deserve to be here. Grand strategy, grand scheme, whether it helped or didn't, I mean, I don't know. There hasn't been a terrorist attack since, a major one since. And if we're trying to be preemptive or prevent that kind of shit, maybe 20 years at war did fucking do something.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I, like I said, you're entitled to that opinion. And the best thing about your opinion and your feelings about it is, guess what? You don't need an iota of validation from anybody. You know what I mean? Like you went through it. You have your opinions and your, and your stance on it, and fuck anybody that questions that, and also I don't need any fucking validation either. You know what I mean? Like, and I, for people that, here's what I'll say, and I'm probably going to catch a lot of shit for this, but I think it needs to be said, is in the veteran community, we have, there's a lot of people, and you said it, that was the best version of themselves, or that was the, a very prolific time in their existence, right? And, and I was the same way, I 100%. And I was telling Jose before we got on here, had I not got into the job that I do now, where I'm still kind of around or in that same community, like, I'm not going to say I wouldn't be sitting here, but we definitely wouldn't be having this conversation. You know what I mean? Like, and who knows what or how it would have happened, right? Or what would have happened. But here, how I dealt with it, or how I kind of turned the page on that, was, and my dad was a big part of it, because I obviously had a lot of conversations with my old man when I came back about his experiences coming home from Vietnam. And he was like, hey, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it, or a smell or something that I see, or so on and so forth. He goes, but just over time, you just start to go, that was then, this is now. And you just make a conscious effort to focus on what's in front of you instead of what's behind you. And I was like, okay, roger that. And I'm not saying that was a turning point. The true turning point for me was I went through some experimental treatment, and I was going through some counseling, and the counselor said to me one day, he goes, what if you were to die today, what would it say on your tombstone? And I kind of didn't know how to answer it, and I also didn't know where he was going at the time. And he said, he goes, well, I was like, man, fuck, I've never been asked that. I don't know. He's like, well, it would say Marine. It would say, Marine. It would say, father. It would say husband, whatever. He goes, you can make it say whatever you want, right? Because you have many things that it could say. And I was like, okay, I'm tracking. He goes, you're only 40, whatever. He goes, you're not even halfway done. He goes, think about what it could say by the time everything is all said and done. It could say author, it could say musician, it could say, you know what I mean? Like, he was basically illustrating, like, hey man, those things and who you were, and those things that you were, because we all identified, right? And that's the big thing. Like, if I always identify as a combat veteran, then it's very hard for me to carry that identification into the quote unquote real world, right? Or that sense of self, but it's so ingrained in us. And we were Marines, we lived it. There is no such thing as a former Marine, like all that shit, right? But when he said that, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. He's like, everything you did and everything you were served you at that time, and you were successful. He goes, all of the anxiety, all of the hypervigilance, all of the combat mindset, all of the, just walking around ready to snap necks and cash checks and all that shit. He goes, that doesn't serve you anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you have new and different endeavors. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Tyler Durden. You're not your fucking job. But unfortunately, in the Marine Corps, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. It's who you are, right? And so until veterans can we're never going to shit can it. We're never going to, shun it. But there's a whole lot of life left to live. And instead of letting our experiences drag us down or keep us stagnant, use our experiences and in the trials and strife that we've been through and the trauma to crush whatever is in front of us. I know that sounds like a motivational speech, but I truly believe that. You know what I mean? Like, GWAT veterans are capable of anything, in my opinion. Like, Jesus Christ, when's the last time we've had 2 decades, of sustained combat? You know what I mean? And if you can make it through, whether it was 3 deployments, 1 deployment, or 15 deployments, the civilian world should not kick your ass, in my opinion. It just shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that, like I said, I'm going to catch hell for that. But it's like, come on, man. Like, you went through the worst of the worst and you did it voluntarily. Like, the rest of this should be easy, as long as we don't focus on all the bad shit that happened. That's my opinion.
No, that's solid.
Yeah.
That's fucking really good. I mean, I struggle with that too. Not just I'm a driven individual, in my own right. And I feel like it's a lot of times I'm tiptoeing around like ways to try to say the right things or like motivate somebody if they're having a difficult time. But it's like, yeah, you just got to stop focusing on that shit. I know, hell, anybody that knows my story knows that it hasn't been easy, my time in the service. Jose as well. Like, I'm not trying to put myself up or anything like that, but it's like, that's on me. That's in my pack. Like, if you want to help share this load a little bit, that's fine. I'm never going to pass the fucking gun off, but like, you know what I mean? We can talk about it. And maybe you just acknowledging that we're all doing this still, then, you know, that helps. But I don't need that. It's not like I seek that out. You know, it's, and I think that's why we run into trouble too, because we have those mentalities like, this weight in my pack is my own. These guns, these crew serves I'm carrying are my own. You need help, I'll carry yours. But there's too many of us that are like, I'm not going to pass the gun off. And, you know, if you fucking carry that to the grave at an early age, that's the wrong way to do it. Like,
Right.
pass the fucking gun off. But at the same time, you know, we got to keep looking forward, not at that. And I'm not saying forget it. Like, I would never want to forget. We've talked about this before. I wouldn't want to forget any of the memories, good, bad, you know, indifferent. And like like chatted with you about, some of my favorite memories are like training memories. They're not combat. They're not being deployed. It's like just with the boys type shit. And I think if you can look back at those better times, you know, not just a negative shit, it makes it, I don't know, like, I cherish that. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's, I don't think anybody that goes through something like that, no matter how traumatic, severe, whatever you want to call it, it was like, you're always going to remember like that what you lived through, you know, because that's what builds you. It builds your character. It fucking, people gain lifelong friends from it. It, you know, teaches us how to be in control of ourselves if you want to use that information you learn that way. And, you know, be driven, be a fucking leader, be whatever you need to be. It's I guess it just all depends on how you perceive what you went through. And
Right. Yeah. 100%. I mean, what other environment could you be, you know, in hysterical laughter 1 second, the most terrified you've ever been in your life the next second, followed by, prolonged periods of, take my own life level boredom, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And whatever, and the cycle repeats, right? And, you know, and I think we should, as veterans, support each other, cling to each other, so on and so forth. But I think there needs to be a little bit of tough love. And when I say tough love, hey man, if you want to have an absolute break yourself down shotgun style, cry on my fucking shoulder for 2 hours straight, I'm here for you. As long as it's not every other day. Like, at some point, you know what I mean? At some point, you gotta, everything that made you a Marine, or a soldier, or, Navy, airman, you name it, like, those things didn't go away. You know what I mean? That now is the time to really go back to, and that isn't like suck it up and shut the fuck up, but it's almost that. You know what I'm saying? Like, find a healthy outlet. You know what I mean? Like, find a new endeavor, find a hobby. You know what I'm saying? Like, seek your buddies out in X, Y, and Z. But it's, we can't, I think the guys that have the most problems are the guys that are just still living there. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to find a way to get past it. You just do, and we all know what happens when guys don't. Which is very unfortunate. And there's always going to be an element of that, right? I think there's always going to be an element, has there ever been a prolonged conflict where you don't have all these different individual, some people knew exactly what was going to happen, or at least they had a good, mental mindset. You know what I'm saying? Like, some guys had no idea what was going to happen, and they were kind of completely overwhelmed, and everybody's got their meter, right? And once your meter gets pegged, a couple too many times, and everybody's different, right? There is no broad stroke brush answer to it. I can tell you what's not the answer to it, and it's the fucking pills. You know what I mean? That they're pushing 24/7. That's the absolute worst, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's people where the pills work just fine. I haven't met anybody, you know what I mean? Like, I want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think the things that they're going to now, the, kind of holistic or alternative methods that they're going, I think is a move in the right direction. You know, I think the pills are a bigger travesty than the pullout of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I really do. You know what I mean? Like, I really think that's what 99% of the problem is just here's all the pills, call us later. You know what I mean? Like, I specifically said, I don't want anything. And they're like, nothing. I said, I don't want anything. It showed up in the mail anyways. You know what I mean? Like, that's a problem, you know, and I threw that shit in the trash. Like, nope, no fucking way. You know what I mean? And I'm not shitting on anybody that takes them and it's helpful, but we all know the overwhelming majority of the problem is their approach to how to treat, you know. That's my soapbox for this episode.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope. I mean, that is not the pills. I mean, you know, you think, and that's what's fucking. I mean, we've smashed this fucking.
It's variability, man. Everyone's going to respond differently. No one knows until it actually happens, and then I tell you what. So this is one of the components, right? We have symptoms of decline, right? The Westphalian order is reshaping itself, even if I don't even think that's a thing anymore, right? So you have a constant connection to content that, you know, creates atmosphere of fears, right? And for us, it's still fresh. Like, you're still in it, right? That's one of the questions I want to ask. You're still close to it, right? I still talk to guys that are still deploying. So to me, it's still fucking fresh.
Right.
And that's part of the problem that I have is, like, I don't stop fucking training. I'm training now for war with China, even though I'm not, I don't know. It could happen, right? And that's one of the, and that's the issue, is that it's like we haven't had a fucking break, right? We just got a break and it was a fucking disaster. And then now we're getting ramped up to go again with fucking, you know, China or Russia. I mean, I think we're already there, depending on how you want to view it.
Right, right.
God knows what assets are down there right now, fucking doing the work. But those symptoms, I don't think allow the symptoms, the increase in populations in megacities, the increased connectivity, what's happening in like California is somehow impacting me here in my home, and I don't even fucking live in that state, right? As a result of these things, so it's like this constant elevation of tension and conflict persists, and you know, you go back to that default mode network of what was or who was developed, and you're put into this situation where all of a sudden you got to be this thing that, you know, you survive through the worst of the worst, and you take on this, what John Paul Sartre called, you know, living in bad faith. You put on this role that isn't really you anymore, but it's the only thing you know, because that's how you survive the worst of the worst, because of all the symptoms. And so I think, like, for example, the Bhagavad Gita, there's this major war going to take place. Arjuna, the warrior, is, you know, having a moral conflict, right? He has to go to war with his family, people that he knows, and he can't escape the anxiety and the dread. And Krishna is telling him, look, man, you have to practice renunciation, which is the complete, you know, departure of these sentiments. And that's a daily practice. And, you know, is the VA going to say, hey, look, there's this doctrine, there's this, not doctrine, but there's this kind of philosophy of life for specific types like you who have gone into harm's way. You should look at that. They're not going to prescribe philosophy. They're going to prescribe fucking, you know, something that has measurable impact. Narrative doesn't. So it's like, it's very difficult, right? It's very difficult, especially whenever you have parents and family members, like in our unit, for example, man, it's like dozens and dozens of dudes have just fucking checked the fuck out. And, you know, this, you know, the contagion, the science behind the contagion, for every one suicide, 135 people are impacted as a result of that. It's mimetic. So again, you know, when you have parents and family members who want, you know, a system that is not designed to look at the holistic or the things that are not going to have a direct measure or metric, it's a losing battle, I think. And you know, one thing that was detrimental to, I think, the overall force, whether it was the active duty force or the veteran community, was this major downsize that took place. The downsizing that just left everyone disgruntled. Everyone went their own ways. There wasn't a solid way of saying, let's make this into a network so that we don't have these deficiencies. Maybe that's where GWAT
Right.
comes in, right? Where you say, like, look, this is what didn't work. This is what could work. Since we're already in this like new conflict, maybe these things should apply. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know who's going to do that work. I don't know who's going to fucking change all that.
I don't know either. I know it's not going to be the proverbial them. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to be the proverbial them, because it's an unfortunate, fact of life that it's, there's, as long as there's people willing to go, which excuse me, we all were, um, what happens after the fact is they don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, they may stand up and say they do, you know what I mean? But in reality, nobody, you served your purpose. You know what I mean? You served your purpose, and, you know, fuck off, like, or here, here's the VA, or here's the whatever. And, I don't, it would have to be somebody independent. It would have to be somebody, from outside of the normal machine, if you ask me, which, but I don't know. The next couple of years will be interesting. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, with the recruiting efforts and this and that, like, I don't. It would be interesting to see if they. I don't think they'd have the post 9/11, you know, surge of signups of volunteers. Um, if either East or West, clicked off hot. You know, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. You know what I mean?
There was a recent military.com article that came out where they're looking at a kind of hybrid conscription build a pass because I think they're looking for 160,000 new recruits to fill in the ranks. I think across all the armed services. That's kind of like what we missed. The only branch that was able to come through was the Marine Corps.
No shit.
Yeah, the Marine
That's
Corps was the
awesome.
only. Yeah, the Marine Corps was the only one. Um, and I shoot, Jesus, man, those numbers are staggering. I think oh my God, wasn't the Heritage Foundation? Anyway, I don't know if you ever read the DoD and the Pentagon reports, but it's like 75% of American youth are not able to serve as a result of chronic illnesses, obesity, and then low IQ. And then the majority that can serve, they don't want to serve because
Right.
of the prevailing narratives of, you know, what mainstream media puts out. And then obviously whenever they hear us, have dialogue, it's like, oh shit, do I really want to go through that?
Yeah. Well, and I try and put, yeah, it's interesting because I try and man, you want to talk about don't look for contact, it'll find you. Man, when I was a kid, because all I knew was movies and stories and you name it, like, and because I obviously didn't know any better, I couldn't wait, because you're invincible. You're 18, you're 19, you're 20. Like, you don't even have the thought of actually taking one, or the one in the face, doesn't even really kind of enter your mind, or at least it didn't enter mine, as it well should have. I can tell you what, after the first couple of incidents, it started to kind of creep in a little bit, like, oh man, this could not go the way I imagined. There's some alternative
Oh yeah,
endings to this story,
yeah.
and I don't know, like, if I was a kid, if I was 18 and I was watching the withdrawal from Afghanistan on TV, from an 18-year-old's perspective, which is hard to, rewind the clock, and I don't I don't think that would have deterred me at all. but I'm one person, like you said. And I think anybody that's why the Marine Corps probably doesn't have trouble meeting its numbers like the rest, because they already attract kind of a special, breed anyways, or an alternative human, in a good way. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, that's a super interesting,
Yeah.
like maybe it would, maybe it won't. I'm sure it would differ from person to person, but there's obviously no arguing the fact that it definitely didn't help.
No.
It
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
help.
I'll tell you what, that's something that we've also talked about too, is that there's a military like case system that was developed. It's like all of a sudden all the early OIF, guys that went down range, now their kids are going down range. And that's very dangerous because now there's not a proper representative of all the states to give equal amounts of recruits that represent the United States. Now and that can be mutinous, like dangerous, like coups can fucking take place when you have something like that. But you also have a large body of individuals who did serve and saw how the policymakers and the administrations handled it, that they're like, no, my kid is never going to fucking serve. But there's something
That's come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That's come out of my mouth. And then I quickly kind of, and my wife too, because my wife had some deployments, like we sit, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we sit and talk about that. And I'm like, we've got 3 kids, prior to the Afghanistan pullout. I was like, not going to force them. They can make their own decisions. Obviously, I'd be super pumped if they did follow keep the family tradition going, so to speak, plus all the things that I think, that you benefit. And then the pullout happened. And I was like, I hope none of them go. I hope none of them go. And then I kind of quickly, I don't want to say retracted that, but I go, if they want to go, I'm not going to stop them, but there is going to be a series of very frank conversations about, hey, like, don't drink the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to go because it's something you want to do, then then go. But if you want to go because you think, it's going to be part of some, I don't even know, I can't even articulate it, but I don't want my kids to ever serve and then feel the way I felt watching that Afghanistan withdrawal. You know what I'm saying? Or watching, kind of the way Iraq, kind of ended up happening. And you guys know it, you guys are feeling it right now the same way I'm feeling it. Like, it's but my dad probably felt the same way after Vietnam in '68, and
I'm sure fucking worse, dude. Way worse.
He couldn't have stopped me if he put a gun to my head, when I was 18, and he couldn't stop my brother or sister from going either. They're 4 years younger than me. They're twins. They both did a couple tours, and so I don't know. It's tough, man. It's a
that's
tough
that
thing.
genetic component. That's what I'm talking about too, is that there's an underlying genetic component that builds these capabilities for, a civilization to maintain itself. But then all of a sudden we're like, what do you do with that? Like, for example, I got two boys, and they're you can see it already in them, and what am I supposed to do with that, right?
It's hard.
Yeah, especially to like try to like hone it and maintain it. They need to experience the monster in a way that, I'm not saying that war is healthy, but there's a
Dragon.
there's a specific infrastructure that allows that. Yeah, I just worry. I think I worry. I worry partly because of the conversations that I have that are not maybe taking place, with regular civilians who understand what's happening in the world. And to me, it's a lot more realistic. It's a lot more real. Like Afghanistan, for example, I was there in 2017, 2018, and it, like, again, it's still fucking fresh in my mind. So it's like very difficult to let go, even though I have the capability, to stop fight or flight with that activation. It's still fucking there. It just, and this is part of the problem that I have on a daily basis, is I don't want to be connected as much, because when you're connected, you take in so much, like doing all the analytics, right? You're going in, you're looking at situations, you're taking from it, and then you're seeing all these patterns, and you're fucking disgusted. Like every fucking thing is something negative, right? And
Yep.
so it's like, part of that is I'm doing it to myself because I don't know how to back off yet. Or maybe I do need to back off. And then I'll go through these bouts where I don't even want to get on social media or some type of news media. But then how am I supposed to stay informed as a citizen?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, right. It's hard, right? Like I turned the TV off 3 years ago. I turned the TV off 3 years ago. I turned Facebook off, you know, so long ago I don't remember. And I still do a fair amount of Instagram, but to your point, like you find yourself just getting kind of sucked into it, and it's an addiction like anything else. And all of, like you said, all of it's negative, all of it's just kind of you know emotion porn, if you will, you know what I mean, where it's and uh man, the more I disconnect, um the better I feel, hands down, period, end of story. And another thing that I got into pretty heavily was like stoicism, or the philosophy of stoicism. And a lot of Ryan Holiday books, a lot of Alan Watts lectures, a lot of meditation. I definitely find meditation helps a lot, whether it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day, which isn't a long time, but you'd be surprised. And but more importantly, it was the stoicism and kind of the teachings, like the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, where it kind of it, like the teaching, the bottom line is focus on what I have control of. And once you figure out that the only thing you really have control of is yourself, then it's like the weight kind of just melts. You know what I mean? And you have to constantly remind, that's not saying I can't affect things or I shouldn't do endeavors that, are for good, but everything that I'm receiving from everything, all five senses and everything that we got, like I decide whether or not it makes me happy, it makes me sad, it makes me angry. Like I decide, like I have control over that. They don't. Nothing else does. You know what I'm saying? Like minus getting kicked in the mouth, you know what I mean? Where you go from, you know what I'm saying? Like I have, all things created equal. The only thing I truly have control over is how I respond to what I'm receiving. And there is great solace and peace in that, but it takes a tremendous, it's a daily thing.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a daily, it's a minute, by the minute thing, and I find that if I start to kind of lose sight of that, I don't keep that on the ticker tape, then I start getting anxious, or I start getting angry, or I let things affect me in ways that, that they probably shouldn't. Right. And so that's been kind of my main effort since my experimental treatment, where it kind of opened up and, showed me that you're only being manipulated if you let yourself be manipulated, if that makes sense, and not trying to sound like I'm smarter than the next guy or what have you. I'm just saying, like, that has been my main, that was the turning point for me. Like there was me before the experimental treatment, there was me after, and after is a much, much calmer, more at peace, less angry, cooler, calmer individual, and anybody that knows me well will attest to the same, you know. And it's a daily thing, it's a daily, that's where your main effort is, you know what I mean, is reminding yourself that, I am in control. Nobody else is in control of me but me, right? And then after that, everything kind of shit kind of buffs out, if that makes sense, you know.
Sure. Yeah. No, yeah, not every day is like that. I got introduced to psilocybin assisted therapy, and that has done wonders in terms of like plasticity, neuroplasticity, and then neurogenesis for my chain of thought, and then applying certain wellness, so it's like actual biological model to to basically be balanced out. Which one of the things that I talk about with other Marines is, the Marine Corps in general, and technically most of the armed forces, is Aristotelian in nature. We have a virtue ethics template, and Aristotle's virtue ethics template is all about balance, right? You have the excessive, the deficiency, and then the middle, which is the mean, right? And it's all about balance.
Yep.
And those are easy applicable things that we know inherently because it was, taught to us, it was conditioned in us, that we can apply. And once you figure out that process, that those mechanics, it becomes a lot easier. But it takes like a level of, this is why I like cycling through microdosing. And there's like there's a specific amount pill form that I take that allows that to happen. Where I have a difficulties like the season, like, so starting in like February up to like September timeframe, I'm a pretty not erratic, but that's when the fighting season was. So it's like, that's whenever my body is keeping that score. It's like, let's fight. But yeah.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, that is definitely one of the things that I hope they finally figure out is the way to go. You know what I mean? Like that is a solid answer. You know what I mean? That is a solid answer to, I know tons of dudes, obviously now yourself included, that is a much better alternative than the normal shit that they're pushing. You know what I mean? A much better alternative.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was really interesting too. Me and Paul, we had a wonderful conversation with a guy named Gary Hess, who runs the Veterans Alternative of Holistic Approaches, and he's done a lot of legislation in terms of trying to turn that around, from the THC side of things, the cannabis side of things, all the way to the psychedelic side of things. And he says something to me that sticks in my head, which I often phrase a lot. It's like, it's crazy that people have to become criminals in order to feel better or heal, to recover. Like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, no shit, man. Yeah, it's God, but I think the tide is turning. I really do. I think the tide is turning, and I would be remiss. I would say for anybody that's listening, seek out Veteran Solutions. If anybody's familiar with Veteran Solutions, they're it's kind of the same. It's along the same track, just helping hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, seek the alternative. You know what I mean? Seek the alternative and finally, find peace and find solace, and and kind of, like I said, not turn the page and forget, but be shown that it's that was then, this is now. There is the sun's gonna come up tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's gonna be okay. I pray every day that becomes kind of the mainstream thing, and I think we'll see it. I think we'll see it because the data doesn't lie. You know what I mean? The data's not going to lie. They just don't have enough data yet.
Yeah,
I think they do. I just think it's a matter of controlling, right? I mean, you can't create variants from like psilocybin, like THC. And so once you have something like that, that's like life-changing and life-altering, unlike a psychotropic or like a narcotic, industries are going to essentially be disrupted. And
but man, was it Rogan or who was I listening to the other day where they were talking about this, where it's almost like AI. Like if we let big pharma get a hold of and regulate DMT and psilocybin and ayahuasca and all this, all these other, peyote, ketamine, this is not, like, imagine the harm they could do, and then in the same breath it's like, well, it can't be worse than the psychotropics, and the crazy shit that they're pushing down everybody's throat right now. You know what I mean? Or can it? I mean, time will tell. Who would know? It's a very interesting, because of course I think it was Rogan was like, legalize all of it, let people go crazy, or the doctor was like, legalize all of it, let it go crazy, and Rogan was like, hey man, once Big Pharma gets a hold of this, we're fucked. And I don't know, man. I don't.
Haven't they? Who was it? Is it like Washington State? What state like decriminalized everything?
It was either Oregon or Washington. Yeah.
Was it? I remember this was like a little while ago. I was like, damn, this is going to be interesting to see,
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think here in the next like 5 years, we'll see a lot more of it. I know the lady that I talked to who the wizard that I talked to, there's a certain template that you can apply to the community where I think it's like only like 2 to 3 sessions of oh my god, was it MDMA?
Yeah.
Has it like a 90 percentile effectiveness of doing away with the trauma.
Mhm.
Dude, what? Yeah, that's amazing. I haven't done a full journey like that yet. I'm working my way to it. I've had some pretty cool microdosing experiences. Very spiritual.
Yeah.
One was kind of freaky, but it's done a lot. It's done a lot.
Good for you, man. That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in here, but I know we're kind of, we can go as long as you want, but I don't want to skip by at least your schoolhouse time there. So yeah, man. Where do we leave? Yeah, I just kind of wanted to get, I don't know where we were at in the timeline. You coming back from the invasion deployment, and then I was just kind of trying to bring it back on the rails career wise, where you went from there.
Schoolhouse. Yeah. Quantico Schoolhouse. Very, very fortunate to be asked to be, or be, offered a position there. I was right after the invasion. And again, my timeline sucks. So
did you have to re-enlist for that?
So I did it kind of weird. So I had a 4-year enlistment, and then, man, how did it go? I had my original 4-year, and then I did a 2-year extension for like jump school or ranger school, or I asked for something, and then because I was a school's whore. I was a school's whore. I like every underwater basket weaving, send it to me. I don't care. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I did, like, I had every school imaginable. I couldn't get enough, right? I just wanted to I wanted to go to everything. And so yeah, I re-up for 2 years, or did a 2-year extension. I don't think I didn't get either one of the two things I asked for, because the invasion happened. And then after like, I got my re-enlistment bonus for the 2 years or whatever. And then, yeah, after the invasion, they kind of, I had went through the advanced cyber school prior to the invasion. And that's kind of where they kind of picked out who was going to be an instructor, and so I had orders to Quantico prior to the invasion, right? And then so we did the invasion, and when we got back, they were like, "Hey, we're turning right around." Like, I think 1.5 did like a 2-month turnaround, something like that, because they went right back to Fallujah. Like, maybe it was 2 months, maybe it was 4, I can't remember, but wasn't, it was quick.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, that was another big decision point. It was like, do you want to go back, or do you want to go to Quantico? And at the time, I was like, well, are we going back for sure? Because if it's positive, if it's 100%, then I want to go back. But if it's not 100%, then I'm not going to miss this opportunity to go to Quantico and teach. And of course, like everything, it wasn't 100%. Yeah. So I decided to go to Quantico, and I don't know how long I was there, but it wasn't very long. And they ended up going back, and that was kind of like a fuck, like, did I make the right decision? Did I not? I felt bad because obviously my team went back, obviously everybody bumped up in the structure, so to speak. And they did me a lot of solids by calling me and rubbing it in, any chance they got, which was fantastic. But I'm not big on quote unquote regrets. I don't, I made my decision, and my decision was what it was. But yeah, got to Quantico and taught there for probably longer than I should have. And it was fantastic. It was my, one of the second best experience that I had in the Marine Corps, minus the invasion. And I was very, very fortunate to be there for as long as I was. Learned a ton, and got exposed to a lot of things that, because it's Quantico, your guys at division school, probably don't get exposed to, because it's a little bit more of a meat grinder at first Mardiv, second Mardiv, third Mardiv. They're the inside instructor joke was, you guys are out there in Quantico fucking around, and we're out here training students. They weren't wrong. We only ran one basic course a year. So we weren't exactly pulling our weight, but managing the doctrine in the curriculum, liaison with all of the three letters, being right there close to headquarters, it was always kind of the people that would knock on the door to that schoolhouse, like, you just never knew. You never knew who was going to come to that schoolhouse. Like, whether it was dudes from NASA, you know what I mean? Like, on multiple occasions.
So wait, you're teaching all these fucking different groups of people the skill set, or
no. So it was like, it was the hub, right? So for instance, this one guy came from NASA, and he was like a double doctorate, optometrist. And, he was doing this study, or had these Oakleys that would record what people saw.
oh shit.
And all this shit, right? And he wanted us to wear them while we were watching for the sniper students, to be part of this study. And you just, endless amounts of just shit. It could be HRT dudes, from FBI HRT being like, hey, come over here and help us do X, Y, and Z. Like, we're building urban hides, or,
Right.
you just never knew who was going to knock on the door. Fucking Tom Berenger came knocking on the door when I was at the advanced course, because they were, the gunny at the time was helping them film Sniper 8 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, just crazy shit like that, so it was a cool place to be. And we busted his balls too. Like, I would 100%. I think it was Sniper 2 or Sniper 3. And I was in the advanced course at the time. I wasn't even on staff yet. And we were all on a smoke break hanging out. And all of a sudden, this guy walks up, from the parking lot, and my platoon sergeant goes, holy shit. He goes, that's Tom Berenger. Of course, everybody stops and looks, and we're like, what's up? Everybody's, peacocking, jarheads, what's up? And he's like, oh, I'm looking for Gunny so-and-so. And I don't want to name him, because I don't have his permission, but we're like, yeah, he's inside. And somebody goes, yeah, I loved you in Major League, range me, and just started busting his chops, and, I just giving him shit, and of course he laughed, and it was cool. He hung out on the range. But yeah, Quantico was an interesting place to work, man, because you were kind of, you just never knew who was going to come knocking and asking for God knows what, so
Yeah.
you got a lot of experience in a short amount of time. Say nothing about, the honor of teaching the students, whether it be the advanced course, basic course, we had one advanced course, and we had the sniper employment officer course, where we were teaching the young lieutenants, the intel lieutenants, what they could expect out of the Marines if they came to a battalion that was, where the state platoon fell under intel,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was great, man. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic experience, and I had a super good crew of dudes. Most of the dudes that I was there with at the schoolhouse, I'm still with to this day, which is, very, very uncommon, because I got there in 03, I left in 07. And yeah, most, I'm within arm's reach of the majority of those dudes still to this day. So it's, once again, we're really fortunate to have that experience.
Oh yeah. Dude, no, that's sick. I can't, yeah, I know you kind of like touched on it, but when force redesign and all that. I'm like, how the fuck did 0317 not play a part in this? This sounds like exactly like what we need more of. Like everyone just needs to be that almost. It's like
You're right.
I don't, it's just fucking crazy. But
Loitering munitions.
What's that?
Loitering munitions have changed everything.
Yeah, they'll find a way. Pretty soon we'll all be obsolete. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It'll be robots. It'll be Skynet. But
so after your time teaching and everything, what'd you do? Because you stayed in for a little bit, right? Was it another enlistment or?
Yeah, so man, that 2 year was up. I did another 4. Yeah, I did another 4 because I was there from 03 to 07. And so right at the tail end of that, they came up. So my plan was always to end up in reconnaissance, in the reconnaissance MOS. But my sniper, pathway just kind of took me. And remember, I was an E5 for 7 years. So that ended up working out perfectly. Right up until they came out, it was right after Det 1, first and second force, they lowered the flags, first and second MARSOC, and they're wringing them dudes out like a wet towel. And my plan was to finish my time there at the schoolhouse and then lap move over to reconnaissance. And because I hadn't picked up E6 yet, but I was super close, right? And I actually got in zone for E6 almost, to the minute where they came out with this MAR admin where they said no senior E5 or E6 lap moves to 0321.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh shit, like that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the Big Lebowski, like that's not going to work. That fucks up our plan. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? And but because I was in Quantico and I had kind of some influential friends in some influential places, and I had those relationships, there's no better way to put it. I kind of weaseled my way in, and I ended up going to BRC and ended up lap moving after about a year and a half of some, kind of up in the air time where I was just kind of training and going to schools. But then I ended up over in Okinawa with 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion and did a green side, did a force platoon, had a pretty, pretty unique experience on a MEU that I talked about on another podcast where I got kicked off the MEU off the coast of Thailand. And yeah, but I did my time there at 3rd and got selected for gunny after about 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just, everybody gets to the point where they've kind of, I don't want to say you unplugged from the matrix, but having been through the invasion, having taught at Quantico, and then wanting to, continue the efforts in either Iraq or Afghanistan, it was very, very hard for me to go back to the MEU mentality. And that's not me shitting on a MEU, because obviously they play a fucking crucial role in global stability. But there was just a lot of personality conflicts, and I was already kind of teetering towards getting out because the grass isn't always greener. Like once I got to the reconnaissance community, I wasn't disappointed, but I wasn't fulfilled to the fullest extent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, I love the fact that I was in the community. I love the fact that I've got the t-shirt or the hoodie and all that shit. And I love the dudes that I was there with, but I'd almost just kind of ranked out, like I had ranked out of the fun stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I just started looking other places, and I had a bunch of buddies from my state platoon and my Quantico time that were into some other stuff in the contracting world. And I just started making phone calls. And I said, hey, I'm at 14, or excuse me, I'm at 12, for like 11 years and 8 months by the time everything was said and done. If I go over 12, that's kind of over the falls. You know what I mean? Some people would say 10, but at 12, I was like, I think I've had enough. You know what I mean? Like if all there is left to do is, possibly get another, couple combat deployments as a platoon sergeant or a company gunny, I wasn't interested in that really, like staff academy this and ops chief that. Like I just wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I still felt like a team leader at heart, if that makes sense. Everybody wants to be a team leader for their entire life. Like
Yeah, right.
I get it. You know what I mean?
Brits,
Like
the Brits have it right, man.
the Brits, yes. Yeah, the Brits have it. They almost probably they've cracked
20-year Lance Corporals, man.
right. So yeah, I just kind of made the decision. I made the decision that I was just kind of gonna make the leap and see what happens, and probably the scariest time of my life, you know what I mean? Because I had gone all in, man. Like I would have been a Brit. Like if they'd at 18, if they just said, here, sign this 25-year contract, I couldn't have signed it fast enough. You know what I mean? Like they'd have had me forever. But I kind of started to see the sailboat in the mall, if that makes sense. Like once I kind of started to see that, the big machine, I started to become disenfranchised. Like there's a war over here. We're worried about stupid shit. I was waving the bullshit flag left and right, and highly combative, highly disgruntled. All I cared about was the the Marines. So I got out. I just made the decision. My wife had got out a couple months earlier, maybe a year earlier. She was working over at headquarters, just camis one day, pantsuit the next type of deal into the GS meat grinder. And like I said, a bunch of close buddies in the contracting world. And although they didn't go full open kimono, obviously over the phone, but they said enough to where I was interested. And they set me on the right path for that. And I've been on that path ever since. And, that's where we're at, and I'm still on it right now. So
oh, yeah.
It's it's been good. It's been interesting, surrounded by lots of good dudes, hungry for knowledge, always trying to push the envelope. And the only thing I know for sure is I don't know anything at all, and it's, things I thought were fact yesterday are, completely, debunked, tomorrow. And it's just kind of enjoying the adventure.
You guys mainly work like precision fire stuff. I know if you want to get into like your companies, you were telling me about you do.
Yeah. So Nomadic Research, a teammate of mine from over in Afghanistan, he left the community. God, I don't know when, but it's been a minute ago. And he called me up out of the blue and said, hey, I'm looking for something else. I'm looking to do, kind of our own thing if you're interested. So, Matt and I, he was a team guy forever. And then, on the contract side, lots of experience, super good dude. I said, yeah. I said, what do you need from me? He says, I don't need anything. I need your Labrador-like loyalty. And I was like, I'm in, and
yeah.
So yeah, we started Nomadic Research, and clothing, outdoor apparel, jackets, hoodies, hats. We've got a bunch of travel accessories, just things to make your life easier when you're on the go. You know what I mean? I encourage everybody, obviously, take a look at that. And then I started 102250, which is my consulting business. So whether it's local law enforcement or federal law enforcement or what have you, and then I have a couple products that I push that were designed that would specifically help special mission units accomplish their job in a more efficient manner. So obviously I push that. I don't advertise it, but I obviously, if you're in the know, Air Fingers quote.
Yeah.
But just trying to keep as many irons in the fire, right? It's, I'm doing this today. Who knows what I'll be doing tomorrow? Kind of going all the way back to the tombstone. Like, what's my tombstone going to say at the very end? Trying to stay as diversified as possible, whether it's taking flight lessons or learning how to fly drones, or, hey, let's go to the, a language academy for 6 weeks and do a full immersion or something, like just always trying to keep, as many doors or pathways open as humanly possible, and obviously it helps me keep my mind occupied. And, for a sniper, I don't deal with boredom very well. I like to stay busy, So yeah, I've always, I just try and keep as much on the table as I can, yeah, Matt and I have had it's been a tremendous learning experience. We're super proud of all of our products, but it's a slow burn, and we're grinding it out and just, doing what guys like us do, which is not taking no for an answer and just keep pushing forward and all that good shit, and I've always said, hey man, I'm not trying to shop for helicopters. You know what I mean? I want to make good products for good people doing good shit. I want to have a positive impact no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's a personal experience, like, does that individual walk away from me being like, man, that was painful, or fuck that fucking guy? Or does that individual walk away and go, man, that guy's all right. He made me laugh. He seems like, like he seems like a good dude, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, that's step one, and then everything else falls in behind it. You know what I mean? It's kind of cliche as that sounds, but yeah, it's like I said, me before the experimental treatment, me after the experimental treatment, and I just try and stay me after the experimental treatment, and it seems to be working out so far.
Yeah, I like that. I like your no regrets attitude. I feel like I live by that. There's not much you can do about things after they're done, but yeah, you're on. I feel like I say so much cliche shit a lot of times too, just because I feel like some things that you like gravitate towards, you just want to absorb all of it. So you just like, I need to not forget any of this. So it just sticks with me. And then you fucking radiate it. And you're like, I have to be annoying to people. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't shut the fuck up ever. And they're like, all right, dude, we get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate all that. And it's fucking, no, it's legit. I got kind of a funny question. Maybe it's kind of inappropriate, but I feel like you guys have to like piss yourselves when you're in hides a lot, right? Is that true?
It's I'm not saying it's
I'm just saying, I feel like there's situations where you're there and you just piss.
I'm not saying it's the preferred SOP. I definitely have. I don't think I ever just did the what was it, Lloyd and Harry? Just go, man.
Just go, man.
I don't think I ever. I definitely did a couple times where instead of leaning all the way over, I just kind of leaned over, and
sure,
maybe 20% of it got where it needed to go, and the rest of it was on me, type of deal. Yeah, it depends on the person. It depends on the situation. And, some guys are like, fuck this, I'm going to go take a piss. Right. And other guys are like, negative.
Right.
I'm just going to go, funny story, during the invasion of Baghdad, and it wasn't number one, it was number two. When we first got to our position in one of our rooftop positions in Baghdad, it was kind of a kinetic scenario, to say the least. And and you guys will know what everybody who's been there knows what I'm talking about. One armory a day, I don't give a shit. Like, it just hit me right now. Like, it's happening right now, at the most inopportune time.
Yeah.
And
had a gopher in you.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming right now. And I stopped dead in my tracks right where I was at and let it go. And and buttoned up and got back on it. Well, we were the first ones up there on the rooftop, and we were obviously focused, locked on what was going on in front of us. But I did hear, all the officers, or a lot of the officers, because it was one of the only buildings that you could get elevation and actually see what was going on. So it didn't take them long to figure it out. So in comes half of the battalion staff, and they had to step up. And I heard one of them go, holy fuck, one of them already took a shit up here. Yeah. I was like, that was me. You know what I mean? Like, hey, like, I didn't have a choice, and yeah, so to tell on my, because they had to step over, it to get Oh man, it was
You can't fucking take Marines anywhere, dude. They're just gonna
yeah.
shit and fucking
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want it to happen. It just,
right.
Yeah, yeah.
when it's time, it's fucking time.
Yeah.
And I was scared. All the, like there was a lot of shit going on. So it was, I'm lucky I got out of it, the way I got out of it. But yeah, yeah. So half pissed myself, but there's that.
That was always a question for me. When I was a boot or just going through the process, I was like, how am I gonna take a shit or a piss? Seriously. And when we did Afghanistan on July the 4th, the company commander got everyone a kebab. And I didn't realize that the meat was gonna fuck everyone up.
Oh yeah.
Mind you, we had just flown into this
oh.
fucking supposed hot LZ. It was like the invasion helo bringing us in.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're all fucking, everybody's carrying
Dude.
so much shit. And we're outside of this compound because they're buying this compound from these people, right?
$200.
So we're like out there for like 2 hours waiting for them to like get their personal belongings out of the fucking house. And anyway, it wasn't kinetic, like our infill wasn't what it was supposed to be. So we're all just in this fucking hut, like a platoon plus, gun trucks, everything. They drove up from fucking main base. Nothing happened up there. And like he's talking about, July 4th, this was, so we went in on the 2nd. 2 days later, company commander's like, we're gonna get, so they go down to the fucking market and get, goat meat, whatever it was. Everybody's fucking pissing out of their ass, dude.
Oh, for sure.
We had they kept bringing HSTs of like water. We had a mountain of water that was just out in the sun. No wag bags, no nothing else. Didn't bring MRAs, nothing, just water for like, and we're like, okay, enough fucking water. It was every 30 minutes HST. So we're like, anyway, we're eating this shit, no wag bags. So they send a patrol down back into the market to get clear like lunch bags. They're just these non-zip type clear bags. And this is where we are in an ammo crate, just filling these up with liquid, dude. It was so bad.
It's bad, right?
My first patrol in Afghanistan was me pissing dysentery out of my ass.
Oh.
And I could not. They're like, "Do you want to stop? Set up a cordon so you can shit." And I was like, "No, I'm not getting killed like this, bro. Just go."
Right, yeah.
But it was so hot that my ass got washed from my sweat. So I came back clean.
Dude, it got to the point for a lot of us, because most patrols you would end up patrolling through a canal that was waist deep, and they shit and piss in those canals. So half of us were just pissing our own pants because we're like, right before you get in the canal, just piss it out so we don't have to stop. And then,
I love it. Problem solved, right? Next problem.
Right.
Yeah. I wasn't the only one that, well, I shouldn't say I wasn't the only one that had the same problem I had, but I don't know if it was 5 minutes or fucking 5 hours later, but they came over the net. They came over the net. Like there's still fighting going on. It's still a shit show. Everybody, everybody's shooting in every direction, yada, yada. And not to like, no shit, there I was, but it was fucking crazy. And all of a sudden over the net, I hear like, attention on the net, stop shitting. Like one of the Marines had, and this is my, interpretation of this comms traffic that I heard. Cause it was like, whoever shit, like one Marine had ran into the presidential palace and ran up and found like Airfinger's quote, Saddam's master bedroom or whatever, and laid cable on like the pillow, like, and then they found it, like the brass found it, like there was one individual Marine that was like, fuck all this combat, I'm going to go shit on Saddam's pillow. And when the brass found it, they made a fucking, attention on the net, like, stop shitting everywhere. Whoever, like, whoever shit in the master bedroom, like I couldn't believe what was, like, and then of course we were busy, but things you don't forget, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Those are the
like,
stories I love, dude, because it's like,
like I want to meet that guy. Like, who was that guy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Did anybody find out who it was, or is he secret still?
Oh fuck, I don't.
That's
You know what I
shit,
mean? Like,
he's just smiling at night, dude, when he goes to bed, knowing he did that.
Yeah. should have gave him a silver star. You know what I mean?
Dude.
You know?
Oh, yeah, he
Yeah.
deserves it.
It's
That's the right message to send.
yeah, take that, yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, and you guys had it, you guys, and I often thought about this, like, we moved so fast and so hard and so whatever, like, we didn't have the experience you guys had over there. You know what I mean? Like with the eyes, like one of my family members, was KIA from on patrol, stepping on, like that type of deal, right? And it was having to go like much respect, obviously. We didn't have to deal with that, at least not the time I was there. We didn't really have the IDs, you know what I'm saying? That didn't come till later. We didn't we didn't have the extended patrols. I'm not saying that didn't happen, later on, but in my experience, the things that you guys had to deal with, I think about that often, you know what I mean? Because when I went to Afghanistan in the capacity I went there, not foot patrolling, squad size, platoon size element, fire team size element, having to, I just didn't have to experience that, and that was, yeah, I'm sure that was no easy lift,
I think that's something, because I think like that too, in the opposite way, because it's like, I think knowing you've been there and been through certain circumstances, you like to think about what it would have been like to be on the, on the other side of it, or not on the other side of it, but like, I get what you're saying. Just like I was thinking about going into Ramadi, like, what the fuck was this like for these guys? Because we didn't experience that type of fucking combat. We got, and I reference it a lot. Like, there's a range in Lejeune called Fox 5, and it's a fucking platoon rush range. It's like fucking 200 meters of bounding squad. You have, support by fire, machine guns go set up, do the whole deal. And we would run this fucker all the time. Like, every deployment, you do it like 2 or 3 times Fox 5. And like in Afghanistan, a lot of us got into like ticks that were that, like bounding and open fucking, and it's like, holy shit, the training made sense.
Mhm.
I didn't think it was going to, like, it didn't in Iraq. It would have never in Iraq. And I'm sure a lot of the early units like did Fox 5 type ranges, and it didn't fucking apply there. Well, it applied in Afghanistan, and we had been doing that type of shit, Golf 6 with another one, like a squad fucking rush. And it's like, I'm up, they see me, I'm down. We fucking
Yep.
did that, like with micro terrain as that's it. That's all you have. So that to me was kind of like, oh, I guess, training did make sense. It was worth it. It's a lot different when rounds are coming in though, because
Sure, yeah.
it's fucking, it's stupid, but we all know that, but I like you said, like, I think about that, those earlier times, like what the fuck that would have been like, because it's like, I think it's just because you feel like you can relate to it. Like, if you've lived through this circumstance and you felt like you came out of the other side okay with it, you're like, oh, well, I wonder what else I could endure too,
Sure.
which is, I think it's a good way to think, it
100%.
means you're paying attention and you're invested in it. So,
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
but yeah, those are, I don't fucking miss the defense weeks though. I don't know what you guys did over in fucking West Coast. I know Jose was fucking East Coast, but fucking chiggers, man. Chiggers and Lejeune are terrible.
I used to scratch my legs on purpose so that I could give myself like scabs so that I could just like show Doc, how miserable I was. Like, yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. I think going through all that shit, like, that's what it's all character building,
It's ritual, man. It's
Yeah.
ritual.
Yeah, 100%. I agree 100%. It's, it's, there was good, there was bad, there was the best, there was the worst. And, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And, yeah, I'll always be super, super, happy and look back on those times with, kind of a reverence, but fond memories, I just, the only thing I ever, if I let myself kind of dwell on, and Afghanistan was no different, even though I was there in a much different capacity, it's like, what were we doing? You know what I mean? Like, what did it mean? Did it mean anything? Did it mean nothing? We already are touched on that. Like, we know it didn't, we know it wasn't for nothing. You know what I'm saying? But it's, what did it accomplish? And I don't think we'll personally, on an individual scale, it accomplished quite a bit. You know what I'm saying? Depending on the person, good or bad, and everything in between. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like, what did we accomplish? Yes, there hasn't been any terrorist attacks since we started, but you know,
Yeah. And I from my experience, in the platoon I was with, I actually ended up filling in for Sergeant Garrison, who was Jose's squad leader in 2011, who got KIA in 2009. I was a 51 weapons attachment for another platoon. Half of his squad gets sent back for a bullshit reported fucking people shooting unarmed people type deal. Half of their squad gets relieved. So they pull weapons platoon attachments. We build the rest of his squad back. One of the first patrols we went out in town, we had a guy, we had a not so great engineer attached to us, but he knew how to run the sweeper. Found command wire like within 15 minutes of going out on patrol. Squad leader was an invasion guy too, Sergeant G. He just pulls the wire up, clips it with his multi-tool. We keep going. We find, personnel in the little village that we want to talk to. We have a Terp with us. And this is what kind of shook me from Iraq and Ramadi, because that was basically like humanitarian type stuff we were doing. So we interacted with the people all the time, like they knew us, and they would, it was a relatively peaceful deployment, except for a few pretty big events that happened. But dealing with the Iraqis was fucking so different than the Afghanis, because the first group of people we engaged and talked to were like, I can't even talk to you because Taliban live here and they're watching this right now. As soon as you leave here, they're going to come to my house. They might fucking kill my son. They might kill, do whatever. And like after that first patrol, I remember talking to other team leaders and our squad leader, and I was like, how the fuck are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to be able to gain any type of ground here? And it was very challenging for us because they didn't want to work with us. They were like, if you can't leave somebody here to watch my family, then I can't talk to you, know? And
I get it, man. I think it was after my first month in Afghanistan, I looked at somebody and I was like, somebody had been there for a long time. And I was like, man, tell me if I'm wrong here. I go, but we're either going to be here for the rest of our lives, like generational occupation. This is just America 2.0, or, the Roman Empire type of shit, or we should just leave right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because it's, defining victory, or, defining an end state, after a month, I was like, this is, what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. I want to be here and I want to do it, but tell me what the end is.
Right.
And then obviously years and years later, we kind of see, and I'm not happy I'm right. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's happy, because I'm not the only person that came to that conclusion, obviously. But yeah, it's a very difficult and unique kind of country and situation. And, yeah.
It's weird too, because and that's why I'm grateful a lot of the times for like social media and how you can connect with people, because like years later, I forget how I shared something with one of like Goons Up, one of the big, the machine gun, big page on Instagram, some photos, and some kid like ended up getting in touch with me who was with like 1-3, I think. So we got ripped up by 2-2. They got ripped up by somebody, and then 1-3 was like, this was like 2 or 3 years later. So this is like 2012-ish time frame. And he's sending me fucking Google Earth snapshots of the locations of all the PBs just to like confirm it was the same AO we worked in. And he was like, dude, we didn't fucking hardly see shit that whole deployment. And I was like, no way, because it just didn't seem like an area that could have ever, we could have ever gained ground there. And he was like, man, it got to a point where like we had the civilians in the villages coming at night to the PBs or OPs and saying, hey, there's fucking IEDs here, and they would go find them and dig them up. And I'm like, holy shit, like that's progress, right? And I'm like, and of course he kind of like shit on me, and he's like, yeah, we learned a lot of lessons from your guys' mistakes. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the advantage that the United States has, is that outside of our like coalition forces, who fought with us for the past 20 years, the global stage, their armies aren't as, finesse, so to say, with all this lessons learned kind of shit.
right.
So that's like the tactical advantage that we have over Russia's learning the hard way.
Right. They sure are.
Yeah,
it's amazing, man. And yeah, one of you guys mentioned it, like where, and I knew personally, and I'm sure you guys did too, like, master sergeant, master guns, or recently retired dudes that were just starting to contract. And yeah, my son's over here. He's right down, he's over, we're here, he's over there on deployment. And I can remember looking at the one guy in particular being like, bro, what does that say? You know what I mean? Like, your kid is here on his second deployment, like we've been here for a minute,
Yeah.
And it's crazy when you sit back and think about it like that. That's a lot of lessons learned, a lot, like you said, a lot of generational, knowledge passed down. And it's hopefully we don't lose it, you know what I mean? Hopefully we don't lose it, and hopefully we don't have to use it, in the near future. Because I don't know if anybody's got the fucking stomach for it, and I wouldn't blame them if they didn't.
Yeah, man. And that's the truth too. Like, regardless of anybody's opinion or viewpoint or how they feel after the fact or whatever else, like I've defended so many of my peers on saying, like, if without this, their fucking life would be nothing. I know dudes personally that like fucking rode snowmobiles 4 hours to the recruiting office, dude. Like, they would have, I don't want to say if you don't serve, like, your life's not worth shit, but they had the calling and they fucking made it happen, regardless what they had to do. Like, they fucking, at least they saw it through. Like, they have some type of fucking, dedication to something. And that's like, honor, courage, commitment. That's fucking moto cliche shit, but it's fucking true if you do it and you like embody that,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you live with that forever. So
I agree. And I your post 9/11, your post 9/11 guys and gals, I joined up to the Marine Corps because I watched too many Rambo movies, and my whole family's jarheads, and that's all I wanted to do was check that box, right? But post 9/11, where without a shadow of a doubt, and I don't care if you're a cook, baker, candlestick maker, you know what I mean? When without a shadow of a doubt that you're going, like, that's fucking badass. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you have these younger kids that, during the time, before the withdrawal, that would like approach me and be like, oh man, you're fucking this and that or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm not shit. Like, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. You knew what was happening. Like, you got bigger wassa than I'll ever have. You know what I'm saying? Because you knew and you still went, like, that's fucking rad. You know what I mean? Like, that's American as shit. You know what I mean? Those are good people, but yeah, it's a tough nut to crack, because it doesn't, you know, there's always good and bad to all of it, you know. They're
Yeah,
just
for sure. It's the gift that keeps on giving, so
yeah.
to say. I mean, really. But yeah, man, I appreciate you chatting with us. Not to cut it off or anything, but if you
No,
got
put a bow on it. This has been
yeah,
fantastic.
it's fucking been great. It's been real. I like shit like this because, I think having guys like you on, I know you digitally. That's it. Because a homie of mine is a homie of yours, and that's worth something, around here. But yeah, having guys like you on that fucking will dig deep a little bit and fucking share some shit makes a difference. This isn't, there's no fucking bravado. This isn't fucking ego stroking shit. And I think that gets twisted up with guys that talk about things is like, I'm no weak bitch. I know you aren't. I can tell you aren't. I know Jose personally, been with him for a while, and we're not trying to look like cool guys out here. We're just just trying to talk about fucking real shit and real issues that the community faces. Jose says it all the time, and nobody's trying to be a savior, but opening up a little bit and letting people know what you've gone through and what you still deal with, whether you're fucking pouring it out every day, doesn't mean you don't still have it inside you.
Sure.
That's a big deal. And I think it probably can help some motherfuckers out there.
Good.
Or at least get homies to come chat with us. Cause we like doing this shit. It's fun. So
yeah, it is. It's fantastic. Yeah. And like I told you on the phone, it's, if somebody hears this and goes, yeah, man, or what, if it's, if it connects, because a lot of times I think that's the problem is guys can't look to the left and the right like they could when we were in, you kind of feel isolated, and it's, when you're so connected, and then there's that, feeling of isolation, unless you're one of those guys that just lives at the VFW, or what have you, you know what I mean? So if somebody's listening to this and it helps, then absolutely, that's, we did the right thing. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it was a blast. I enjoyed it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time, man.
Reach out anytime. If I can help, I will.